Hello guys, welcome to Savage Harry. Today we have an incredible story for you. What if Naruto and Harry were brothers raised together in the wizarding world? If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Chapter 1, Burn Marks on the Ceiling. The burn marks had been there since Naruto was 7. They started small, a handprint scorched into the underside of the cupboard shelf, orange gold at the edges, like something had pressed a coal against the wood and held it there. Vernon had blamed faulty wiring. Petunia had gone pale and said nothing, which was worse. Dudley had stayed out of the cupboard after that, not because he was told to, but because something about those marks made the hair on his arms stand up in a way he couldn't explain and didn't want to think about. Naruto thought they were pretty cool, personally. He'd made them by accident, half asleep and dreaming about something enormous and red, something with teeth the size of doors and eyes like molten copper, and he'd woken up with his hands pressed flat against the wood and heat pouring out of his palms like water from a tap. It hadn't hurt. That was the part he kept coming back to. It should have hurt, probably. But it had felt like finally exhaling after holding your breath for 3 years. Harry had been awake. Harry was usually awake when things happened. He had a talent for it, or maybe just a nervous system that refused to let him sleep through anything interesting. He'd sat up on his thin mattress across the cupboard, pulled his knees to his chest, and looked at the glowing marks on the ceiling with an expression Naruto had learned to read as I have 17 questions, and I'm choosing not to ask them right now. You alright? Harry had said. Yeah. Naruto had looked at his hands. They weren't glowing anymore. Did I wake you? Something did. Harry had tilted his head. The ceiling's on fire. It's not on fire, it's just warm. The ceiling is warm, Naruto. Yeah, bit. Harry had looked at him for a long moment, then looked at the ceiling, then lay back down and pulled his blanket over his head. Don't do that when Vernon's home, he'd said, muffled by the fabric. Obviously, that had been 3 years ago. The marks were still there, faded now to a dull amber against the wood, and Naruto had gotten considerably better at not burning things by accident. He still dreamed about the red thing, but the dreams were quieter lately, like something pacing at the far end of a very long hallway, present but not pressing. Harry's accidents were different. His were colder, quieter, a window unlocking itself when he stared at it long enough, a book sliding off a shelf and landing open at exactly the right page, the time Dudley had cornered him in the kitchen and every cabinet door in the room had swung open at once with a sound like a gunshot, which had sent Dudley running and given Harry a headache for 2 days. Harry's strange things happened to the world around him, precise and targeted. Naruto's happened from inside him, and they didn't care much about being targeted. They'd worked out early that they were both doing something that didn't have a name in any book they'd been allowed to read, which wasn't many. They didn't talk about it constantly. What would be the point? Talking about it wouldn't explain it. They just watched each other's backs the way they'd been doing since before either of them could reliably articulate why that felt necessary. The summer Naruto turned 10, the Dursleys went to the zoo. This was not, historically, an event that involved the brothers. Zoo Day was a Dudley event, his birthday treat, which seemed to require not only the full attendance of both parents but also the exclusion of anyone who might accidentally become more interesting than the birthday boy, a category which included Naruto and Harry by simple virtue of existing. Usually they were left with Mrs. Fig down the road, a small, cautious woman who smelled like cats and kept offering them tea she then forgot to make. But this year, Mrs. Fig had broken her leg, and the Dursleys' other options had apparently been exhausted, and so Naruto and Harry found themselves in the backseat of Vernon's company car, pressed against opposite doors while Dudley spread across the middle seat like a rising loaf of bread, being driven to the zoo in a silence so hostile it had its own weather system. Naruto spent the drive watching the road and thinking about the dream he'd had the night before. The red thing had been closer. Not threatening exactly, more like it was trying to get a better look at him. He'd seen the eyes clearly for the first time, 9 feet apart, ember gold with pupils like narrowed slits. Intelligent, old in a way that made everything else seem very young. What are you? He thought in the dream, not scared, just genuinely curious. The red thing had shown him its teeth, which was either a smile or a warning, and then he'd woken up to Harry's elbow in his ribs and Vernon shouting at someone from the driveway. At the zoo, they were given strict instructions to stay out of the way and not embarrass anyone. Naruto interpreted this as permission to do whatever he wanted as long as he kept 10 feet between himself and Dudley, which suited him fine. Harry fell into step beside him with the practiced ease of someone who'd been navigating the same social geography for a decade. What do you want to see first? Harry said. Snakes, said Naruto without hesitation. Obviously, said Harry in the exact tone he'd said the ceiling is warm 3 years ago, dry and fond in equal measure. The reptile house was dim and glass-fronted and smelled like warm stone. Dudley immediately pressed his face against every exhibit, fogging the glass with his breath and demanding to know why the snakes weren't doing anything. The answer was because they were snakes, but this seemed to satisfy no one. Naruto stopped in front of a large Brazilian boa constrictor that was lying completely still near the back of its enclosure, and found, for no reason he could immediately explain, that he felt a little sorry for it. "You look bored," he said, quietly enough that it wasn't directed at anyone in particular. The snake's head moved. It was a slow movement, the kind that required the whole body to cooperate. The boa turned its head until one yellow eye was pointed directly at Naruto, and it held very still, and then Naruto would have sworn to this later would have staked everything on it. It nodded. Naruto felt something go very calm inside him, not the chakra warmth of the burn marks, something older, like two frequencies lining up. "I know," he said, "I get it." "Naruto." Harry was beside him suddenly, voice low. "Are you? It's fine, I'm just—" Naruto glanced at him. "Can you hear it?" Harry looked at the snake and then back at Naruto, and his eyes did the thing where they went very still while the rest of his face stayed carefully neutral. "No," he said. "What's it saying?" "Not much, just it's tired, it misses Brazil." Naruto shrugged, aware this sounded insane. "It doesn't know where Brazil is, but it misses the idea of it." Then Dudley slammed into Naruto from behind, shouldering him aside to get a better look, and the glass cracked not from Dudley's weight but from something, a sound like a single note struck on an instrument nobody in the room could see, and the cage was suddenly open and the snake poured out onto the floor with an efficiency that cleared the room in approximately 4 seconds. Dudley screamed. Vernon roared. Petunia made a noise that wasn't quite a word. Naruto and Harry stood very still in the middle of the chaos, and the boa slid between them without touching either of them, and Naruto could have sworn he heard something that sounded like "thank you" in a register below speech as it went past. Harry looked at the open cage, then at Naruto, then at his own hands. "That was me," Harry said. "Yeah," said Naruto, "I didn't mean to. I know. I was just— he shoved you and I was angry and—" "Harry." Naruto turned to look at him fully. "I know. It's fine, Vernon's going to—" "I know." Vernon was going to be absolutely furious, and he was, with a consistency and thoroughness that lasted for 3 days after they got home and manifested as both of them losing dinner privileges and gaining extra chores and Dudley gaining a new games console, because that was the internal logic of Privet Drive and it had never pretended to be anything else. Naruto cleaned gutters. Harry scrubbed floors. They worked side by side in silence that was companionable rather than empty, passing a single glass of water back and forth, and at no point did either of them apologize for what had happened at the zoo, because neither of them had done anything wrong and they both knew it. The letters came on a Tuesday in July. Naruto knew something was different about that Tuesday before the post arrived, the same way he sometimes knew it was about to rain before the clouds showed up, a pressure at the base of his skull, low and fizzing like the dream was bleeding into daytime. He was in the kitchen doing the washing up and he stopped halfway through a mug and just stood there with his hands in the water and waited. "You've got that face," Harry said from behind him. "What face?" "The one where you're listening to something I can't hear." Naruto turned around. Harry was sitting at the kitchen table with a book that was older than both of them, which he'd found in a charity shop and read 3 times since. He had his chin propped on one hand and his glasses pushed up into his hair, and he was watching Naruto with the calm attention of someone who had long since made peace with the fact that his brother was frequently tuned to a different channel. "Something's coming," Naruto said. "Good something or bad something?" Naruto thought about it. "Not sure yet." The post came at 9:30. Naruto heard Vernon's heavy tread in the hallway, heard the slot snap open, heard the letters land, and then heard a pause that lasted just a beat too long, the kind of pause that meant Vernon had seen something he didn't like. He came into the kitchen with 3 letters in one hand and something that could charitably be described as a controlled explosion happening across his face. He dropped 2 letters on the table. Naruto caught a glimpse of green ink, thick cream paper, a wax seal stamped with an animal he couldn't immediately identify, and held the 3rd letter up between 2 fingers like it was something that had crawled out of a drain. "This," said Vernon in the voice he reserved for truly catastrophic events and the neighbor's cat using his garden, "was in the post." The 3rd letter was different. Same cream paper, same general shape, but the ink on the front wasn't green, it was a deep indigo that shifted slightly in the light, and the script was nothing Naruto had ever seen. Angular fluid, wrong in the same way music played at the wrong speed was wrong, recognizable in structure but not in meaning. Harry had stood up from the table. He was looking at the 2 letters in green ink, not the 3rd one. Are those for us?" "They're for you," Vernon said, as though this were the worst possible thing, which from his perspective it probably was. He dropped the 3rd letter on the table beside the others. I have no idea what that is, but I'll tell you right now we're not. Can I see it? Naruto had already picked it up. Vernon's face went purple, but Naruto was already turning the letter over in his hands, running his thumb along the indigo script. The fizzing at the base of his skull got stronger. Not painful, more like recognition. Like hearing your name in a language you didn't know you spoke. Naruto Namikaze Potter, it read on the front in English below the unfamiliar script. The cupboard under the stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey. Namikaze, Harry said. He was reading over Naruto's shoulder. His voice had gone very quiet. That's not Potter. No, said Naruto, that's a different name. Yeah, do you know what it means? Naruto looked at the letter. The indigo script seemed to move very slightly in his peripheral vision, shifting like a tide. No, he said, but I'm going to. Vernon tried to take the letters. This was a mistake, not because either of them fought him for it, but because the moment Vernon's hand reached for the one addressed to Naruto, every light in the kitchen went out simultaneously, and the temperature dropped about 10 degrees, and somewhere behind the walls of the house something made a sound like a very large thing inhaling, and Vernon stepped back without fully deciding to. The lights came back on. The temperature normalized. Naruto looked at the ceiling, then at Harry, who was looking at his own hand with an expression of mild surprise. Sorry, Harry said to Vernon, though his tone suggested he wasn't particularly. Vernon left the kitchen. He didn't say anything. He just went. Petunia appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later as though she'd been waiting for her cue. She looked at the letters on the table and she went through about 11 different emotions in 4 seconds, most of them complicated, and then she sat down in Vernon's chair and said very quietly, "Open them." They opened them. The first 2 were identical in content. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Though one was addressed to Harry James Potter and one to Naruto Potter, and Naruto noticed the absence of Namikaze in the Hogwarts letter with a sharpness he didn't fully understand. Like the school only knew half of him. Like the other half was in the 3rd letter. The 3rd letter, when Naruto broke the seal, a spiral pattern, not the Hogwarts crest, red gold wax rather than purple, unfolded to reveal 2 layers of text. The outer layer was in the indigo script. The inner layer, tucked inside like a second letter within the first, was in English, and the handwriting was nothing like the formal copperplate of the Hogwarts letters. It was urgent, close-writ. Like someone had been in a hurry. Naruto, if you are reading this, then Minato is gone and someone has done what they could with you. I don't know who raised you, I don't know what you know. I'm writing this the night of October 30th, 1981, and I'm terrified, and I want you to know that your father loved you more than he was afraid of anything, and he was afraid of almost nothing. Your name is Naruto Namikaze. Your father was Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves, and your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, and they both died protecting you from something that wanted to destroy you, and they did it willingly, and they would do it again. You carry something inside you. Your father put it there, and it wasn't cruelty, it was the opposite. You'll know what it is when it wakes up properly. Don't be afraid of it, it's part of you now. I don't know who will find this letter or when. I've keyed it to you by blood so only you can break the seal. If it's reached you, it means you're old enough to start asking the right questions. Your father had family in England. Your great-uncle's daughter Lily Evans, now Potter, I think. This was written down in the family register. I don't know if she's alive. I don't know if anyone from that side will know you. But you should know it. Come to the leaf when you're ready. There will be people here who remember your parents. There will be people who want to help you understand what you are. Your father's student, Kakashi Hatake. Naruto read it twice. Then he set it down on the table very carefully and looked at Harry. Harry had read it too. Naruto had felt him reading over his shoulder, the familiar weight and warmth of him, and hadn't stopped him because Harry didn't stop things. Harry was the opposite of that. Harry was the person you handed things to when you needed to know they would be held properly. Lily Evans, Harry said. Yeah, that's my mum. Yeah, so your dad and my mum were family, cousins, sounds like something like that. Harry sat down. He did it slowly, like his legs had made the decision before his brain confirmed it. He put both hands flat on the table and stared at them and said, "So we're actually brothers," Naruto said, because Harry seemed to be having trouble getting to the end of the sentence. "We've been brothers, we've always been brothers. But now we know why. Now we know why." Naruto picked up the Hogwarts letter again and read it. Then he looked at Petunia, who hadn't moved, who was sitting in Vernon's chair with her hands folded in her lap and her face doing something complicated. "Did you know?" he said. Petunia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Not all of it," she said, which was more honest than Naruto had expected from her. "I knew Lily had, I knew there was another baby, I didn't know his name, I didn't know what." She stopped, started again. "They left you both on the step. There was a letter from the headmaster, it said you were family, that was all it said." "That was all it said," Naruto repeated. Yes, Naruto thought about that for a moment. Two babies on a doorstep, one letter, one woman who'd spent a decade being as unkind as she knew how to be to both of them while technically keeping them alive. He thought about the cupboard, the burn marks, the dinners they didn't get. Dudley's extra Christmas presents stacked in the hallway while they'd shared a single second-hand book between them and called it a good year. He didn't say any of that. What he said was, "We're going to Hogwarts." Petunia looked at him. Vernon. "We're going to Hogwarts," Harry said, and his voice was absolutely, completely calm in the way it got when he had made a decision so fundamental it had become part of the architecture of the room. "Both of us. We've got letters, we're going." Petunia looked at Harry for a long moment, and Naruto watched something move through her face that he hadn't seen there before, something old and sorry and too late, which wasn't the same as being useful but was at least honest. Then she looked away. "I'll talk to Vernon," she said. That night, Naruto lay on his mattress in the cupboard and looked at the burn marks on the ceiling. Harry was already asleep or doing a very good impression of it, which amounted to the same thing. His breathing was slow and even. One arm was thrown over his eyes, which was what he did when the day had been too much and he was choosing deliberately to be unconscious rather than continue processing. Naruto understood that. Today had been a lot to process. Naruto Namikaze. He turned the name over. It felt different from Potter, not better or worse, just different, like finding a room in a house you'd thought you knew completely. He didn't have any memory of his parents. He didn't know what a Hokage was. He didn't know what the leaf was, or who Kakashi Hatake was beyond the signature, or what it meant to carry something inside him that his father had put there. He put one hand flat on his stomach and concentrated, the way he sometimes did when the warmth got too strong and he needed to find its center. The fizzing from earlier in the day had died down, but there was still something there, a deep, low pulse, like a heartbeat that wasn't quite his own. He'd always thought it was just what he felt like inside. He'd never had anything to compare it to. "What are you?" he thought, the same thing he'd thought in the dream with the red thing and its copper eyes. And something very faint, very far away, like a voice heard through several walls, said, "Something your father was brave enough to trust you with, boy." Naruto went very still. "I've been waiting," the voice said, dry and ancient and carrying the particular texture of something that had been inconvenienced for a very long time. "You've been distressingly uninteresting to talk to until now. You can hear me thinking," Naruto thought. "Evidently, you're the red thing." A pause. "I've been called worse. And better." Something shifted way down deep like tectonic plates. "Your father sealed me inside you the night he died. I want you to understand that this was an extraordinary act of arrogance and I haven't forgiven him for it, but I also concede that I didn't give him many options." "What are you?" "What I am," the voice said very carefully, "is not something you're ready to know the full answer to tonight. What I'll tell you is this: I am the reason your hands burn. I am the reason nothing has ever seriously hurt you. I am the reason that snake at the zoo felt something familiar and was not afraid." A pause. "I am also technically nine-tailed and the size of a mountain, which I mention only because you're going to find out eventually, and I prefer to control the timing of my own revelations." Naruto stared at the ceiling. "Nine-tailed, don't make it weird. Are you dangerous?" "Extraordinarily, to me." Another pause, longer this time, and Naruto got the impression of something large and proud swallowing something it found distasteful. "Not," said the voice, "if I can help it." Naruto considered that. "Then what's your name?" The pause this time was different, surprised maybe, if a thing like that could be surprised. "Kurama." "Kurama," Naruto thought. "Okay, I'm Naruto, I know who you are, I know." Just seemed polite. Another long silence, and then something that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a growl, something that lived in the space between those two things, something that felt in its own strange way like the beginning of a conversation that had been trying to happen for a very long time. "Sleep," Kurama said eventually. "You have things to do, Hogwarts among other things." "Sleep, Naruto." Naruto closed his eyes. Outside the cupboard, the house creaked in the way old houses do at night, settling into itself, and somewhere down the road a car alarm went off and then stopped, and Harry's breathing stayed slow and even, and Naruto felt the warmth in his chest settle into something that was almost, in its strange way, comfortable. He had a name that was two names. He had a letter from a stranger who'd known his father. He had a school to get to. He had a brother sleeping 3 feet away who had been his family before either of them had a word for what that meant. And apparently he had a 9-tailed fox living in his chest who had very strong opinions about the timing of its own introductions. All things considered, Naruto thought, things were looking up. He was asleep in 4 minutes. In the room upstairs, Vernon Dursley stared at the ceiling and thought about what Petunia had told him and decided that none of this was happening and went back to trying to sleep, which didn't work because some truths, once said aloud in a kitchen under a failing fluorescent light, are structurally incapable of being unsaid. In the chair by the window in the kitchen, the third letter still sat on the table. its indigo script faint and shifting in the streetlight that came through the curtains. The seal Naruto had broken lay in two pieces beside it, the red gold wax still holding the shape of the spiral. And in a school somewhere in Scotland, in a stone office high up in a tower, a silver instrument on the headmaster's desk that had been still for 9 years suddenly began to move, spinning slowly, emitting a thin thread of smoke that coiled upward and resolved, briefly, into a shape that was unmistakably a fox. Albus Dumbledore, who had been reading and was therefore not asleep, took off his half-moon glasses and looked at the instrument for a long time. Then he picked up his quill and began to write a letter of his own. Chapter 2, Diagon with Teeth. The argument lasted 4 days. Vernon didn't yell, that would have required acknowledging the situation was real, and Vernon's primary survival strategy was aggressive non-acknowledgement. What he did instead was become immovable. He sat in his armchair in the living room and radiated refusal the way a radiator radiates heat, passive and total, and every time the subject of Hogwarts came up, he developed a sudden intense interest in whatever was on television. Petunia tried, twice in a way that surprised both brothers, quiet conversations in the kitchen that they weren't supposed to hear, her voice low and strained, Vernon's a bass rumble of denial. Naruto heard the words Lily's boys once through the wall, and then a silence that lasted long enough to mean something had shifted. He didn't mention it to Harry. Harry had probably heard it too. On the 4th day, Naruto got up before 6, made breakfast for himself, and Harry left Dudley's portion visibly smaller than usual and sat at the kitchen table waiting. When Vernon came downstairs at 7:30 and saw them both sitting there with their letters on the table between them and matching expressions of complete patience, he stopped in the doorway. "We're going," Harry said, pleasantly. Vernon looked at the letters, at Harry, at Naruto. At the burn marks that had appeared overnight on the kitchen table, a perfect ring about 2 inches in diameter, which neither of them had done deliberately but neither of them was going to explain. "I'll call Arabella Figg," Vernon said, and went to make his tea, and that was the end of the argument. Mrs. Figg's leg had healed crookedly and she walked with a cane now, which she wielded with significantly more aggression than her injury required. She arrived at Privet Drive on a Thursday morning wearing a coat that had survived at least 3 decades and carrying a handbag that seemed to have its own internal ecosystem, and she looked at both brothers on the front step with an expression that was not quite what Naruto had expected from a woman who'd spent years boring them with cat photographs. "Well," she said, "it's time then." "You knew," Harry said. It wasn't accusatory. Harry was past the phase of being surprised by things that should have been obvious in retrospect. He said it the way you say "of course" when a magic trick is explained. "I was asked to keep an eye on you," Mrs. Figg said in the tone of someone who has been keeping a secret long enough that releasing it is more relief than confession. "Not by Dumbledore, don't look at me like that, by someone else. Someone who wanted to make sure she nodded at Naruto, and something in her expression was careful in a way he filed away. "Didn't burn the house down before he was old enough to understand why he was burning." "Comforting," Naruto said. "It wasn't meant to be." She turned and started down the path with her cane. "Come along. We're taking the night bus to the Leaky Cauldron, and if either of you tells Dumbledore I took you on the night bus, I will deny everything." The night bus was an experience. 3-decker, violent purple, operated by a driver who appeared to treat traffic laws as vague suggestions made by people who didn't have a magic bus. It went from 0 to impossible in about a second and a half, and every surface inside vibrated at a frequency that did something unpleasant to Naruto's back teeth. And the conductor, a pimply young man named Stan, who was absolutely delighted to have passengers who'd never ridden before, gave them a commentary that combined genuine helpfulness with such relentless enthusiasm that by the 5th minute Harry had pressed himself against the window and was watching London hurl itself past at impossible speed with the focused concentration of someone doing math to avoid motion sickness. Naruto loved every second of it. He stood in the aisle with his knees bent and his arms out for balance, and every time the bus lurched or slammed to a stop or made a right-angle turn that should have flipped it, he just shifted his weight like something in his legs already knew how to do this, and Stan watched him with an expression of disbelief that graduated into something approaching respect. "You done this before?" Stan asked. "Number, you sure?" "Pretty sure I'd remember." Mrs. Figg gripped her cane with both hands from her seat and did not appear to be having fun. The Leaky Cauldron was dark and low-ceilinged and smelled like wood smoke and something herbal that Naruto couldn't identify. It was also, compared to the bus, blissfully still. Tom the barman greeted Mrs. Fig by name and looked at the brothers with a surprise he didn't quite manage to hide before it collapsed into something warmer. "Harry Potter," he said, in a voice that implied the whole room had been quietly waiting. The quiet room became a not quiet room. People turned from stools and tables and a few stood up, and there was a general movement toward them that Harry met with exactly the same expression he used for Dudley's more ambitious bullying: polite attention with nothing behind it, waiting to see what the threat actually was before deciding whether to be concerned. Naruto stepped slightly to Harry's left, not in front. Harry didn't need in front but adjacent, and the angle was natural enough that nobody commented on it, but the message was legible. "If you want to get to him, you go through both of us." Hands were shaken, names were given, most of which neither of them retained. A witch with a bright pink hat cried briefly. Someone said the scar in a whisper that carried farther than intended. Naruto watched Harry smile at all of it with a warmth that was technically genuine but also entirely managed, and thought, "We are going to need to talk about that later." Mrs. Fig extracted them before it became a reception. Through the back of the pub, out into a small yard with a brick wall where she counted the bricks with her cane-free hand, 3 up, 2 across, and knocked. The wall opened. Naruto had expected to be surprised. He'd been preparing himself for surprise on general principle, because the last 2 weeks had been comprehensive evidence that the world was considerably larger than Privet Drive had suggested. But Diagon Alley still got him, because nothing in 2 weeks of mental preparation had included this street that was all vertical energy, windows stacked with things that moved and glowed and defied basic physics, the smell of something sweet from a shop selling cauldrons made of materials that had no business being cauldron materials, a cart going past loaded with what were unmistakably owls in various sizes, all appearing deeply unbothered by the noise around them. Harry stopped walking for exactly 2 seconds, looking up, taking it all in. Naruto didn't stop. He kept moving because stopping felt like something that required a choice he didn't want to make yet, like if he stood still long enough the size of it would become real, and he wasn't quite ready for it to be real. He wanted to stay in the part where it was just motion and color and everything was around the next corner. "Gringotts first," Mrs. Fig said, steering them through the crowd with her cane. "You both have vaults. Whatever Dumbledore told that bank, it's covered for both of you. There's money for your supplies." "Both of us?" Harry said. "Your parents left provisions." "Both sets," she didn't elaborate, and her tone suggested elaboration wasn't available on this particular subject. Gringotts was the kind of building that made architecture feel like it was taking itself seriously. White stone, high columns, an entrance guarded by goblins in red and gold uniforms who looked at every passing human with the frank contempt of beings who dealt in the only universal language, and found most people poorly spoken. Inside, the hall was enormous and chandeliered and busy with the specific industry of a place that understood that money was never the point of itself. It was only the unit of measurement for everything else. The goblin who handled their account was named Griffook, and he looked at Mrs. Fig's paperwork with an attention to detail that bordered on performance, and then he looked at the brothers with an attention to detail that was something else entirely. Naruto felt it land on him specifically. A long look, measuring, calculating, landing on something that wasn't quite financial and not quite personal. "Naruto Namikaze Potter," Griffook said, and the name in his mouth had a weight to it, a precision, like he was reading a full title rather than saying a name. "There are 2 accounts under this name, one Potter, one Namikaze." He paused. "The Namikaze account has not been accessed since 1981. Naruto felt something go still in his chest. "Since my dad died. Since the account was established, yes." Griffook looked at him steadily. "There is also a sealed document within the Namikaze vault. It was deposited by a representative of an institution called." He checked the paperwork and his expression did something subtle that might have been professional discomfort. "The village hidden in the leaves." "I cannot read the language of the document. It has been waiting." "We'll take it," Naruto said. The vaults were reached by cart and the cart descended at a speed that made the night bus feel sedate. Harry went white at the knuckles and stared forward and breathed very carefully. Naruto watched the walls rush past in the torchlight and felt the deep pull of the drop in his stomach and found himself grinning because this speed and dark and the sharp smell of stone and metal felt like something, like the kind of thing that should exist. "Enjoying yourself?" Kurama's voice was faint in the back of his head, the way it often was during the day, present but not pressing, like someone reading in the same room. Immensely, Naruto thought back. Try not to fall out of the cart. Where's the fun in that? The sealed document from the Namikaze vault was a scroll, actual parchment rolled tightly, tied with a cord in red and black, sealed with a wax impression of a leaf inside a circle. It It was old but not degraded, preserved by something other than luck. When Naruto picked it up, the warmth in his chest spiked briefly, pleasantly like recognition. He tucked it inside his jacket and said nothing about it until they were back on the surface and away from Griffith's measuring eyes. Harry's vault held more money than either of them had previously had occasion to imagine. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, it just existed in a different category from any number they'd previously thought about. Harry looked at it for a moment, and then he picked up a reasonable amount and put it in the pouch Griffith had provided, and that was that. Naruto noticed he didn't count it. Harry's relationship with money was uncomplicated in the way that the relationships of people who'd never had any often were. Money was for using, not for being impressed by. The Namikaze vault held less British currency but considerably more variety. There were coins Naruto didn't recognize, flat and angular, stamped with kanji he couldn't yet read. There was a weapons rack that held 3 kunai, black steel, perfectly balanced, tied with tags he couldn't read either, behind a preservation charm that hummed faintly when he touched the case. He didn't take the kunai yet. He took the coins, a bound journal with his father's name on the cover and the scroll he'd already pocketed. He looked at the weapons rack for a long moment before they left. "Those are yours," Harry said beside him. "I know, we'll come back for them." "Yeah." Naruto turned away from the rack. "We will." Madame Malkin's robes took 20 minutes and generated the afternoon's most interesting collision. There was a boy already in there when they arrived, blonde, pale, upright in the way that was specifically taught rather than natural, standing on a fitting stool while a witch pinned his robes with mechanical precision. He looked at Harry first and then at Naruto, and his expression went through an interesting sequence. Recognition of Harry's scar, recalibration when he clocked that Harry had arrived with someone, a second look at Naruto that was trying to figure out a category and failing. Hogwarts. "The boy said, obviously," said Naruto, stepping onto the adjacent stool. The boy's eyes narrowed slightly. Not hostility yet, more like the preliminary calibration of someone who'd been raised to assess everyone they met and was finding the data insufficient. "I'm Draco Malfoy," he said it the way people say things that are usually followed by a reaction. Naruto nodded pleasantly. "Naruto," a beat. "Just Naruto, Namikaze Potter, technically, but that's a lot of syllables for a first conversation." Something shifted in Draco's face. Not the narrowed eyes this time, something that was almost curiosity surprised out of him before he could decide whether to display it. "Potter," the other one's Harry. Harry, on the stool on Naruto's other side, raised a hand without looking up from the seam the witch was adjusting at his wrist. "Hello!" Draco looked between them. It was a look Naruto had seen before, the moment when someone's prepared version of a situation meets the actual situation and has to do rapid, unhappy revisions. He'd clearly had a plan for meeting Harry Potter, probably involving a certain kind of deference or a certain kind of condescension, and the existence of Naruto appeared to have disrupted it in ways he hadn't accounted for. "I didn't know Potter had a brother," Draco said, carefully. "Most people didn't," Naruto said, equally carefully. "We didn't either for a while." "What do you mean you didn't? Long story." Naruto glanced at him sideways. "You know much about Hogwarts, we're going in blind." And that was the thing about Draco Malfoy. Naruto clocked it in approximately 30 seconds. He'd been raised with information, and being asked for it was the social equivalent of being handed something valuable and told to make something of it. His posture changed. The wariness didn't leave, but it made room. He told them about houses, about Quidditch, about classes, about the staff, about the things his father had told him that were dressed up as facts but were mostly opinions with good tailoring. Naruto listened with genuine interest and no particular deference, asking questions where he had them, and Harry listened in silence, and Naruto could feel Harry cataloging everything, sorting, evaluating, setting aside what was useful and what was noise. When they left, Draco was mid-sentence about the superiority of Slytherin House, and Naruto had said sure, maybe in a tone that was agreeable without being agreeing, and the farewell had been cordial in the slightly baffled way of someone who'd been expecting a chess match and had played drafts instead. "What did you make of him?" Harry said, outside on the alley. "Smart, needs an audience." Naruto thought about it. "Would be different if someone had raised him differently." "Yeah," Harry considered. "He's going to be a problem at some point. Probably not our biggest one." Harry squinted up the alley. Bookshop, bookshop. Flourish and Blots was organized in the chaotic way of shops that had more stock than architecture, shelves extending at angles that shouldn't have been structurally viable, books stacked in columns that communicated with each other across the aisle. Harry went quiet in a different way here, not the closed-off quiet of the leaky cauldron but the absorbed quiet of someone whose brain had just been offered exactly what it wanted to do. He moved through the shelves with the same unhurried precision he brought to everything, finding the booklist items efficiently, detouring twice for things not on the list that he apparently couldn't leave without, and Naruto picked up their required texts and didn't comment on the detours. He did pick up one book not on the list himself, a slim volume, no title on the spine, which had been wedged between two larger books and seemed to be wedged very deliberately. He opened it and found it was hand-lettered in a mix of English and the script from the letter, and the first page read, "A brief introduction to chakra theory for the uninitiated practitioner. No author." Publication date was 1962. There was a note in the margin in pencil recent saying, "This will find who it needs to find." Naruto bought it without deliberating and told himself he'd think about the margin note later. Ollivander's was the problem. The shop was narrow and dim and had the specific quality of a place that was very good at one thing and had arranged everything around that one thing without apology. Mr. Ollivander himself appeared from between the shelves like a magic trick in reverse, pale-eyed and soft-voiced, and looked at both of them with an attention that stripped context and left only the thing he was interested in, which was apparently magic in its most fundamental state. Harry went first. The process took 20 minutes and involved a lot of boxes and a lot of hem and one near miss with a vase before a wand made of holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, decided it had found what it wanted. When the wand and Harry connected, every hair on Naruto's arm stood up, not from Harry's magic specifically but from the force of it suddenly having somewhere to go. Silver and white sparks, dense and precise, and Ollivander watching with an expression that was complicated in ways he chose not to explain. "Curious," Ollivander said very quietly, "very curious." "So I've been told," Harry said and set the wand down on the counter carefully. "Keep it in your hand, boy, it won't bite." Ollivander was already looking at Naruto. "Now, you." Naruto picked up the first wand Ollivander offered, cherry and unicorn hair, and felt absolutely nothing. Tried it anyway. A box fell off a high shelf and hit the floor, which was apparently not the desired effect. The second wand, Willow and Dragon Heartstring, produced a sound like a single discordant note struck on an instrument that wasn't in the room. Ollivander took it back quickly. The third, fourth and fifth wands produced, respectively, a smell of burning rubber, a sound like something underground shifting, and a single large crack that ran down the length of the shop window and then slowly sealed itself. Ollivander stared at the window for a long moment. "Interesting," he said, in a different tone from the one he'd used with Harry. "Is that good or bad interesting?" Naruto said. "It's..." Ollivander stopped. He went between the shelves and came back with a box that was dustier than the others, a box he held with what was either care or caution. "I've been waiting," he said, "for a long time to see if this one would find someone." Inside the box, a wand that was slightly shorter than Harry's, dark almost to black, with a grain that went against the direction of the wood in a way that was visible even in the dim light. "Blackthorn," Ollivander said. 11 inches, and the core is..." He paused. "The core is something I have not used twice, and that I will not see again. It was given to me by a man who came to this country once briefly in the 1960s, and who said only that it was Biju chakra, condensed and crystallized, and that he'd been asked to leave it somewhere it would be needed." Naruto looked at the wand. The warmth in his chest was doing something specific, not the ambient pulse of Kurama's presence but something more directed, like a compass needle finding north. "That's part of me," Kurama said, very quietly, more quietly than usual. "Or part of something that was once me, a long time ago." A pause. "Pick it up." Naruto picked it up. What happened was not like Harry's sparks. What happened was heat, visible heat, the air above the wand shimmering in a column of gold and deep red, and for a second the light in the shop changed, everything in the room casting shadows in two directions, and Naruto felt the warmth and the wand and the thing in his chest all align into a single frequency that was profoundly, completely right. Ollivander stepped back half a step. The heat faded. The shadows went back to normal. "Yes," Ollivander said softly. He was looking at Naruto with something that was not quite wonder and not quite apprehension, something that lived in the space between the two. "Yes, I see." "What do you see?" Harry said from beside Naruto. Ollivander looked at him, and then at Naruto, and then at both of them together, and Naruto got the impression that what he was seeing had very little to do with the wands. "That you should learn to use them very carefully," he said. "And that you won't." He wrapped both wands without further comment. Outside the shop on the alley's cobblestones, Naruto looked at his wand through the brown paper wrapping and felt Kurama's presence in the back of his mind, steady and warm and saying nothing. Sometimes the fox communicated through silence. He was learning to read those too. "He was scared," Harry said, "a little, of you specifically. Of whatever he thinks I am." Naruto tucked the wand inside his jacket next to the scroll. "He's not wrong to think it." Harry looked at him. "How are you feeling about all of this?" It was a Harry question, precise and direct, and specifically not asking "Are you okay?" because Harry didn't ask questions he already knew the answer to. He was asking the deeper thing. Are you processing this in a way that's working? Are the pieces finding a shape you can carry? Good, Naruto said and meant it. I feel like things are starting. Like I was waiting for things to start and now they are. He looked up at the alley around them, the moving windows, the impossible wares, the people who lived inside all of this like it was just Tuesday. Same, Harry paused, also slightly overwhelmed but the useful kind. The kind where it makes you move faster. Exactly. Mrs. Fig found them at the apothecary looking at potion ingredients with the interest of people who didn't yet know what any of it was for, and she bought them each an owl with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone completing a list. Harry's was small and white-brown with round golden eyes that looked at him with an intelligence that was immediately reassuring. Naruto's was completely black, larger than Harry's, with amber eyes that went narrowly when it looked at Kurama's scroll, and then apparently decided this was fine, and accepted a piece of dried something from Mrs. Fig's mysterious handbag. Naruto named his cage because it meant shadow and because the naming felt like it wanted to be in the language from the letter, the language he didn't yet speak but was beginning to feel the shape of. Harry looked at his owl for a long moment, turning the name over somewhere behind his eyes and said, Hedwig. Where'd that come from? Book on famous witches. She seemed like a Hedwig. The owl Hedwig turned her head toward Harry and made a sound that was probably agreement. Platform 9 3/4 required running at a wall, which was the kind of instruction Naruto had absolutely no problem following, and Harry accepted with the resigned practicality of someone for whom the laws of physics had already been renegotiated multiple times this week. They went through one at a time, Naruto first, and the sensation of it was less dramatic than he'd expected. A brief resistance, like pushing through something that didn't quite want to be pushed, and then suddenly he was on the other side and there was a train. It was enormous, red and gold, and the platform was full of the specific chaos of an institution's departure day, parents and children and trunks and owls and things that kept trying to escape from bags, and underneath the surface noise a current of excitement that was its own kind of weather. Naruto pushed his trunk against the train and stood on the platform and looked at all of it and thought, I am going to love this. Not as a wish, as a fact. Harry came through the wall behind him and stopped at his shoulder and did his thing, which was scanning, cataloging, organizing before acting. His eyes moved across the platform and landed on things in sequence, exits, points of interest, potential problems, people. They landed on a family near the far end of the platform. Red-haired, numerous, loud in the best possible way, moving with the collective energy of a group that had done this before and found it no less exciting for the repetition. There were several children, older ones already on the train, leaning out of windows to shout things, and among them a boy about their age with a face full of freckles and ears that stuck out slightly and an expression of someone who was excited and trying not to show it because everyone else in his family had done this already and he didn't want to be the one who made it a big deal. He was making it a big deal. Naruto could tell from 30 feet. He looks like someone I'm going to like, Naruto said. Harry followed his gaze. The red-haired one. There are several red-haired ones. The one with the owl. Yeah, that one. They found a compartment and loaded their trunks, and 20 minutes later the red-haired boy appeared in the doorway with a look that managed to be apologetic and hopeful simultaneously and said, Everywhere else is full. Could I get in? Naruto said. He got in. He sat down. He said after a moment of working up to it, I'm Ron Weasley. Naruto. Harry Potter, Harry said. Ron's eyes went to the scar on Harry's forehead and then away, quickly, which was the first time anyone that day had noticed the scar and then immediately tried not to make it a thing, which immediately made Naruto like him. Your brothers, Ron said, looking between them. Yeah, they said at the same time. But you look, Ron stopped himself, started again. Sorry, that's a completely different. Yeah, Naruto said. We know, it's a long story. Do you know anything about Quidditch? The train began to move, and outside the window the platform slid backward and then was gone, and England opened up in the late afternoon gold of a summer that was ending, and Ron Weasley began to explain Quidditch with the evangelical enthusiasm of someone who had never once doubted that Quidditch was the most important thing he would ever explain to anyone. Harry leaned against the window and listened with his arms folded and added precisely 3 questions, each one making Ron look at him like someone had given him a particularly good chess problem to solve. Naruto ate most of the food from the trolley and asked questions that were mostly tangential, and somehow each one nudged the conversation into territory that made Ron talk for another 10 minutes. And by the time the Scottish border appeared on the horizon, dark and high and real, they had something that felt like the foundation of something real. A girl appeared in the doorway, brown-haired, book under her arm, the specific energy of someone who'd been walking the train looking for a thing and had possibly found it. She looked at Ron with an expression that suggested he'd been on her list, then at Harry, then at Naruto, and Naruto watched her catalog them with an efficiency that rivaled Harry's. "I'm Hermione Granger," she said. "Has anyone seen a toad? A boy named Neville's lost one." "No," Ron said. "What's Neville's toad look like?" Naruto said. Hermione looked at him. "Like a toad, presumably. That helps." Something crossed her face that was almost a smile, suppressed quickly. "I'll keep looking." She started to leave, then turned back. "You're Naruto Potter, the other Potter." Her voice did something careful on other. "Namikaze Potter, yeah. There's nothing in Hogwarts a history about." "No," Naruto said. "There wouldn't be." He met her eyes steadily. "Come find us when Neville has his toad back. We're happy to explain what there is." She looked at him for a moment, then she nodded once, the way people nod when they've decided something, and left. Ron watched her go. "She's very useful," Harry said. "I was going to say intense." "Both," Naruto said. "Definitely both." Outside, the last light was leaving the sky, and the Hogwarts Express was climbing into hills that were enormous and dark and felt older than anything Naruto had a name for, and somewhere in his chest Kurama was quiet, and the wand in his jacket was warm against his ribs, and the scroll from the Namikaze vault was there too, still sealed, still waiting for the right moment. Naruto looked at Harry, who had fallen into a comfortable silence with his book open and unread in his hands, watching the dark hills pass. "Hey," Naruto said. Harry looked up. "We're doing this." Harry held his gaze for a moment, and something in his expression shifted, something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite relief, something that had no precise word for it in any language either of them yet spoke. "Yeah," Harry said, "we are." The train went on into the dark, and the dark opened up ahead of it, and somewhere above the hills the first stars were beginning to show. Chapter 3. The sorting of two storms. The boats were Naruto's favorite part. Not the castle, though the castle was something, rising out of the dark above the lake like someone had decided a mountain needed improving and had been very serious about it. Not the candles floating over the water or the way the reflection of the whole thing wavered in the black surface below. The boats themselves, small and wooden and moving with no visible mechanism across water that had no business being that still, carrying 111-year-olds toward something that would change all of them in different ways. Naruto sat in the front of his boat and trailed one hand in the water and felt the cold of it run up his arm, real and immediate, and thought, "This is real, this is actually happening. I am on a lake in Scotland going to school in a castle." Kurama said nothing, but the warmth in Naruto's chest was doing something that felt, in a fox-shaped way, like approval. Harry was in the same boat, sitting opposite him, watching the castle grow. Ron was beside Harry, gone quiet in a way that wasn't his usual quiet. His usual quiet was rare and effortful, a thing he had to work at, but this was the quiet of someone who'd heard about something their whole life, and was now confronting the difference between the heard-about version and the real one. Hermione was in the adjacent boat with Neville, whose toad had been found behind a seat cushion on the train and was now reciting in his jacket pocket, occasionally visible as a small and philosophical bump in the fabric. The giant squid surfaced briefly to Naruto's left, one tentacle curling above the waterline, and he watched it without alarm. The tentacle hung there for a moment, considering, and then went back down. "That was a squid," Ron said. "Yeah," Naruto said. "There's a giant squid in the lake. Apparently." Ron looked at the water, then at Naruto. "You're very calm about that. I talked to a snake in June and found out I have a fox living in my chest in July," Naruto said. "Squid's fine." Ron opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Harry for context. Harry shrugged, which was the shorthand for yes, that's all accurate, and there's more, and we can tell you later. Ron appeared to accept this as a reasonable position and went back to looking at the castle. Professor McGonagall was the first person at Hogwarts who made Naruto genuinely pay attention. Not because she was intimidating, though she was, in the specific way that people who have earned their authority through competence rather than performance are intimidating. It was the way she looked at them. Most of the adults they'd met since the letters arrived had looked at Harry with recognition, and at Naruto with an adjustment, a recalibration. "Oh, there are two. Oh, I wasn't told about two." But McGonagall looked at both of them with the same level, measuring regard that said, "I know exactly who you are, and I'm deciding what you'll need from me before you need it." She gave them their briefing about the sorting with an efficiency that Naruto appreciated. She told them what was coming, what was expected, and what would happen if expectations weren't met. She didn't make it frightening and she didn't make it small. She told them the truth in a way that left room for the truth to be complicated. Then she went back through the door, and the entrance hall went back to being full of nervous 11-year-olds, and the ghosts turned up. Interesting, Harry said, watching a ghost who appeared to be bleeding from a partially severed head float through the wall and stop to make conversation with a boy near the stairs. Which part? All of it. The whole ecosystem. Harry watched a second ghost drift past without acknowledging anyone. Every institution has its own logic. I'm trying to find theirs. They're dead, Ron said. That's the logic. There's more to it than that. Harry finds the logic in everything, Naruto told Ron. It's his thing. Give him an hour and a place and he can tell you how it works. Ron looked at Harry with an expression that was recalibrating. Really, it's just pattern recognition, Harry said uncomfortably. He's being modest, Naruto said. He's not modest about most things but about that one, yeah. I'm modest about plenty of things. Name one. Harry opened his mouth, closed it. I'm thinking. Take your time. Ron made a sound that was rapidly suppressed, which Naruto identified as a laugh that Ron had decided it wasn't safe to have yet. He filed that away. Ron was going to be a good audience when he trusted them enough to actually be one. McGonagall came back, and they went in. The Great Hall was the kind of room that was difficult to fully take in because it kept giving you new things to look at before you'd finished processing the previous things. Naruto did a quick sweep, ceiling first, which was showing the real sky outside and currently featured a significant amount of cloud and stars, which explained Hermione muttering bewitched to look like the night sky. I read about it in Hogwarts. A history behind him. Then the 4 long tables. The students already seated watching the first years file in with the particular mix of judgment and nostalgia that upperclassmen everywhere brought to watching new arrivals. Then the staff table at the front, faces new to him, and at the center an old man white-bearded with half-moon glasses and robes the color of midnight, who was watching the line of first years with an attention that appeared general but landed on specific points. It landed on Naruto for about 2 seconds before moving on. He's been waiting for us, Naruto thought, not to Kurama specifically, just thinking it. He already knows we're here. Obviously, Kurama said, I told you. That instrument in his office. He knew the moment the letter seal was broken. What does he want? Same thing everyone wants from you, most likely. The question is whether he wants what's good for you or what's good for his plans. With powerful old men, those two things are usually adjacent rather than identical. The sorting hat was on a stool in front of the room, and it was old and battered and clearly sentient, and it opened its brim and sang a song that was more informative than it appeared to be on the surface. Naruto listened to it carefully. The houses were presented as equal, which was probably true in the way that most things people said were equal were true, technically, approximately, with significant caveats. Then the song ended and McGonagall produced a scroll and names began to be called. Granger, Hermione. She was up the aisle before her name finished being called, sat on the stool, and the hat touched her head and was quiet for approximately 4 seconds before calling Gryffindor, which nobody in the room had the information to find surprising but which Naruto suspected everyone who'd met her for more than 5 minutes could have predicted. She sat down at the Gryffindor table with the posture of someone crossing something off a list. Longbottom Neville. The hat was on Neville's head for a while, long enough that Neville's knuckles went white on the stool's seat. Then Gryffindor, and Neville's exhale was audible from where Naruto was standing, and the Gryffindor table applauded with the warmth of people welcoming someone who'd needed the win. Names went on. The first-year line shortened. Ron caught Naruto's eye with a look that was performing casualness and achieving moderate success. Potter Harry, the room changed. It was subtle, a degree or two in temperature, a shift in how attentive the attentive people were, but it was real. Naruto felt it. Harry walked to the stool with the same measured pace he walked everywhere, sat down, and the hat descended over his ears. The hat was still for longer than it had been for anyone. The Great Hall was, briefly, completely silent. Naruto watched Harry's face. It was very controlled, that managed expression, the one that gave nothing away, the one Naruto had been reading behind for 10 years. But he was watching Harry's hands, which told the truth when Harry's face didn't, and his hands were completely still on his knees, which meant Harry wasn't controlling anything. He was listening. What the hat said to Harry, only Harry and the hat would know, But whatever it was, it took 90 seconds, and at the end of 90 seconds the hat called, "Gryffindor." The Gryffindor table erupted. The other tables applauded with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Harry took the hat off and set it carefully on the stool and walked to the Gryffindor table, and as he passed Naruto he said very quietly, "It'll talk to you, don't let it rattle you." "Does it try to?" "It tries to be honest." "That's not always the same thing." He went and sat down, and the room's attention recalibrated, and McGonagall looked at her scroll and called, "Potter," a pause, a fractional adjustment. "Namikaze Potter Naruto." The room's calibration shifted again, differently this time more uncertain. The name was in two parts and the second part was unfamiliar, and it created a ripple, a question, a "who is that" moving through the hall like a current. Naruto walked up the aisle and felt it and didn't look at anyone in particular and sat on the stool. The hat came down over his eyes, darkness, close air, and then, "Oh," said the hat, not aloud. Inside, the way Kurama spoke, but different, lighter, more specific, like a single voice compared to Kurama's geological presence. "Oh, that's..." Then it stopped talking. Or rather, it started doing something that wasn't quite talking and wasn't quite reading. It was rifling, Naruto thought, except that wasn't right either. More like listening. Like it had opened a door it expected to be empty and found a room full of things it hadn't budgeted time for. "There are two of you," the hat said finally. "Technically, yes," Naruto thought. "Is that a problem? It's unprecedented." The hat sounded genuinely unsettled, which Naruto found interesting because he'd assumed hats didn't have the range for unsettled. "I'm designed to read the mind that sits beneath me. There is your mind, which is extraordinary in ways I can see but not fully categorize, and there is something else, something older, something that is not a student and not a person and which is regarding me with significant hostility. That's Kurama. He's fine, he just doesn't like being read. He is, I have no category for what he is. Nine-tailed fox, sealed in my chest by my father. I see," the hat said in the tone of something that does not see but is choosing to proceed. "And your magical ability is..." Another pause longer. "I have been sorting students for 1,000 years. Your magic is not like wizard's magic. It exists alongside it, but it's not the same substance. There is something chakra," Naruto said. "It's called chakra. Two disciplines, two sources, both entirely native to you, not learned, not inherited in any simple sense." The hat seemed to be doing something strenuous. "This is significant, boy. This is..." And then Kurama, who had been present but silent since the hat came down, said something. He didn't say it to Naruto, he said it to the hat. Or rather, he showed the hat something, the way you show something to someone rather than describe it, and what he showed was big enough that Naruto felt the edges of it and was glad he was getting the peripheral view rather than the full picture. The hat made a sound. It was not the kind of sound a hat should make. It was not audible to the hall, only to Naruto, inside the close darkness beneath the brim. But it was the sound of something very old being made briefly, comprehensively aware of something much older, and finding the experience clarifying in an uncomfortable way. Outside, the great hall waited. McGonagall waited. Dumbledore at the staff table waited, and his expression did not change, which was its own kind of change. The first years in line waited. Harry at the Gryffindor table sat very still. 47 seconds had passed when the hat said to Naruto in a tone that had recalibrated itself entirely, "You are not a student I can sort in the traditional sense. You contain multitudes that my 4 categories cannot cleanly accommodate. But I can tell you what I see and you can choose what to do with it." "All right," Naruto thought. "You are brave enough for Gryffindor, but your bravery is not the hot kind, it's the kind that exists before fear arrives, which is rarer and harder. You are clever enough for Ravenclaw, but your intelligence is instinctive rather than systematic. You think with your whole body, not just your head. You have enough ambition for Slytherin, but your ambition is directional. It points outward, toward people, toward the idea of a world you want to exist, and that's not quite what Slytherin is designed for." A pause. "And Hufflepuff would value your loyalty, but your loyalty would eventually crack Hufflepuff's infrastructure because you don't scale it. You give it fully and without measure, and you expect the same. So where does that leave us?" Naruto said. "With your brother," said the hat. "Because the honest answer is, you belong where you choose to belong, and I think you've already chosen, and I think the choice was made a long time ago in a cupboard under some stairs." Naruto felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't known was tight. "One more thing," the hat said, quieter. "Tell the fox I'm sorry. For whatever it's worth, from something that's also been used as a tool longer than it would have chosen. I'm sorry." Naruto blinked in the dark. "I'll tell him." "Good luck," said the hat, and then, louder, out to the whole room, its brim stretching wide, "Gryffindor." What happened next happened in the space of 3 seconds, and it was nobody's fault exactly, but it was also maybe inevitable given what had been building since the wand at Ollivander's. The hat lifted from Naruto's head. The Great Hall applauded, less than they had for Harry, because Harry's name meant something and Naruto's second name meant nothing to most of them but a solid welcome. Naruto stood up from the stool and turned toward the Gryffindor table. And the relief of the whole thing, the hat's honesty, Kurama's unexpected moment with a sorting hat of all things, the sense that okay, we're in, we're here, this is the chapter that comes next, hit him somewhere around the sternum, and the warmth that lived there spiked and the wand in his jacket went hot, and for exactly 1 second the candles in the Great Hall tripled in brightness, every single one simultaneously. And a wave of heat passed through the room like a pulse and then it was gone, everyone felt it. The Great Hall went quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when something has happened that requires assessment before response. Naruto stood between the sorting stool and the Gryffindor table and looked at the room looking at him. He didn't apologize, he didn't explain. He put his hand in his jacket and felt the wand, still warm, and thought settle and felt Kurama do something that was the equivalent of taking a deep breath, and the warmth receded and he walked to the Gryffindor table and sat down beside Harry. "You all right?" Harry said. "Completely. The candles, I know, I've got it." He looked down the table at the faces still watching him. He met them each one without looking away first. "It won't happen again tonight." A few of them nodded. A few of them went back to watching the sorting. One red-headed boy 2 seats down older was watching Naruto with an expression of pure delight. He caught Naruto's eye and raised his goblet in a small private toast. Naruto, not knowing who he was but reading the energy correctly, raised his water glass back. Harry, watching this, said quietly, "That's a Weasley. They all look like Ron." "That one's a lot more like Ron than he probably wants to admit," the sorting continued. Weasley Ronald was called eventually, and Ron came up the aisle with his chin slightly out in the way he had when he was working up to something, and the hat touched his head and immediately, without hesitation, called Gryffindor, and Ron sat down across from Naruto with an expression of relief so total it was almost comedic. "That easy," Naruto said. "According to the hat I'm obviously Gryffindor." Ron seemed mildly offended. "I don't know if I should be happy about that or not." "Be happy about it," Harry said. "It's where we are." "Right." Ron looked at them both and then down the table at Hermione, who was reading something she'd produced from her robes. "We're all in the same house." "Is that good?" Naruto said. "In my family, being in Gryffindor is basically the baseline assumption, but yeah." Ron glanced at him. "The candle thing, is that going to keep happening?" "Less than it has been. I'm still getting used to containing it." Ron considered this with the equanimity of someone who had grown up with magic and found the variations in it more interesting than alarming. "My mum once set the kitchen on fire when she was cross at my dad. Took out a wall and half the garden." "That's actually very comforting," Naruto said. "I thought it might be." Dumbledore's after-dinner speech was brief, specific, and contained one moment that Naruto paid more attention to than anyone in the room probably expected him to. The headmaster stood at the front of the hall, and he was warm and clear and spoke with the ease of someone who'd been doing this for decades. And he said the standard things about the school year, terms and conditions, the Forbidden Forest, Quidditch tryouts, Caretaker Filch's list of banned items, which apparently ran to several pages. He mentioned the third-floor corridor with a prohibition that was phrased carefully. "Anyone who does not wish to die most painfully," which Naruto noted was phrased as a preference rather than a rule, which was a particular kind of language. And then near the end, Dumbledore looked out across the hall with the expression of a man saying something apparently general, and his eyes moved briefly precisely to Naruto. Not to Harry, to Naruto, and then moved on. "He's curious about you specifically," Kurama said. "Your brother represents a known quantity to him. A chess piece he's been planning around for years. You are not in his plan. Is that good or bad? It's neutral. The question is what he does about it." A pause. "Don't trust him too quickly. Don't refuse to trust him too quickly. He's complex. From a nine-tailed fox, that's interesting advice. I have layers." After dinner, the Gryffindors followed a prefect through corridors that moved and portraits that talked and staircases that changed their minds about destinations, and arrived at the Gryffindor common room, which was red and gold and full of fires and armchairs, and Naruto walked in and immediately felt the warmth of it, not chakra warmth, not Kurama warmth, just a room that had been welcoming people for a long time and had gotten good at it. Harry stood in the middle of the common room and looked at it, and his face did something Naruto rarely saw it do. It just let go. The managed expression, the cataloging attentiveness, the quiet armor of being Harry Potter, it all relaxed briefly into something that was just a boy in a room that was warm, far from Privet Drive at the start of something. Naruto didn't say anything. He just knocked his shoulder against Harry's as he passed, and Harry knocked back, and that was enough. The dormitory had 5 beds, which meant 5 roommates. Harry, Naruto, Ron, Neville, and a boy named Dean Thomas who'd arrived with a West Ham poster. He immediately began arguing with the dormitory's stone wall about how to hang. The wall being stone did not engage. Use a permanent sticking charm, said their fifth roommate Seamus Finnegan from his bed, where he was attempting to make something happen with a piece of parchment and producing small quantities of smoke instead. I don't know that one yet, Dean said. I'll learn it and come back to you. Naruto sat on the edge of his bed and opened the scroll from the Namikaze vault. He'd been waiting for the right moment for this, not privately exactly but with enough space around him that he could take the time it needed. He cut the cord with the small knife he carried in his boot, a habit he developed around age 8 without entirely knowing why. The cord parted and the scroll unrolled across his knees, revealing dense columns of the script from the letter, the same angular fluid text that shifted slightly when you looked at it from the wrong angle. He looked at it. He couldn't read it. That fact hit somewhere lower than he'd expected. Harry, who had been organizing his trunk with characteristic precision, looked over. He crossed the room and sat beside Naruto and looked at the scroll. Same script as the letter, Harry said. Yeah, can Kurama read it? Naruto had not thought of this. He felt slightly stupid for not having thought of this. Can you read it? Kurama's response was slow, deliberate, like someone pulling a library book from a shelf they haven't visited in a while. It is a shinobi document, written in the formal script of the leaf. I can read it. What does it say? A longer pause. Something careful in it? It is a record, Kurama said finally, of your father's jutsu, the technique he used the night he died. It is also another pause, a letter from your father. He wrote it before he died. He sealed it here knowing that the only person who could unseal it would be you because the seal responds to your specific chakra signature. Naruto looked at the scroll. Do you want me to translate it now? Kurama asked, and there was something in the question that was careful in a way Kurama usually wasn't. Or would you prefer now? Naruto said, please. The translation came slowly, not as words but as meaning, the sense of things arriving before the language, the way you sometimes understand a song in a language you don't speak. And then, piece by piece, his father's words. Naruto, I won't make you read through too many words. I know what night this is and I know what I'm about to do and I don't have much time, so I'll say the things that matter. You are the best thing I've ever done. You and your mother, she went first and she was braver than anything I've ever seen, braver than anything I've been, and I want you to know that. You came from the two bravest people I knew. Inside you is something I've bound with everything I have. It's called the Nine Tails, Kurama. He's not evil. He was made to seem that way, made to be a weapon by people who wanted something to aim. Don't make the same mistake with him. He's old and powerful and he's going to be furious with me for a long time. And eventually, if you're patient enough, I think he'll be your greatest ally. I'm leaving you in a world I can't navigate for you. I don't know where you'll end up. I don't know who'll raise you. I've had to trust that the things I've put in you, not just Kurama but the rest, the instincts, the heart, the stubbornness that your mother always called your best and worst quality will be enough. They'll be enough. Learn everything. Trust carefully. Don't let anyone make you small. I love you. Minato. Naruto sat with the scroll on his knees for a while. Ron had gone quiet on the other side of the room and Dean had stopped arguing with the wall. And Seamus's parchment had given up producing smoke and nobody was talking and the silence was the respectful kind that people construct without conferring. Harry was still beside him. Just there the way Harry was always just there, the warmth and weight of him on the mattress, not saying anything, not filling the space, just present. Naruto rolled the scroll back up carefully. He looked at the ceiling. He sounds like he was good, he said. Yeah, Harry said, he does. I wish, he stopped. Never mind. You wish you'd known him. Yeah, he looked at Harry. Do you, with yours? Harry was quiet for a moment. Every day, he said simply. But then I think, who would I be if things had been different, and I don't know the answer to that, and that scares me more than the question. You'd still be you, Naruto said. That's not changeable. You don't know that. I really do. Naruto leaned back on his hands. Some things are fixed. You're one of them. Harry looked at him with that expression that was hard to read because it was the unguarded one. The one that only came out when Harry had stopped running the calculation. It was the expression that meant he'd heard something he needed to hear and was deciding what to do with it. Same to you, Harry said eventually. Since we're doing this. From across the room, Ron said very carefully, like someone stepping around something fragile. I've got some chocolate frogs if anyone wants. Naruto looked at him, then at the chocolate frogs, then at Harry, whose face had done its thing where it went back to its everyday version but kept a small warm thing behind the eyes. Absolutely, Naruto said, bring them over. Classes started the next morning, and the morning after that Naruto nearly set something on fire in Charms, which was less dramatic than it sounded because it turned out the thing he'd nearly set on fire was a piece of parchment that was already on fire as part of a Charms exercise. So Professor Flitwick's assessment of the situation was more enthusiastic than alarming. He was better in transfiguration, which surprised him. McGonagall had started them on converting matchsticks to needles, and something about the requirement, focus, intent, the precise direction of energy toward a specific small change, felt familiar in a way he didn't have a framework for yet. His matchstick was a needle by the end of the first lesson, clean and sharp, and McGonagall looked at it with the expression she reserved for things that met her exact standards and said, adequate, which Ron later informed him was McGonagall for exceptional. Harry had done his in 4 minutes and spent the rest of the lesson converting the needle back and forth between states, apparently because he found the process interesting rather than because he was showing off, which was worse in a way. Potions was Snape, which was its own weather system. Severus Snape entered his classroom with the energy of someone who had decided long ago that the optimal state of a room was slightly afraid, and the room generally complied. He was thin and dark-haired and moved with the quiet precision of someone who'd learned to conserve everything, and when his eyes swept the room they landed on each student with a weight that was specific rather than general. They landed on Harry first, and something happened in Snape's face, something complicated and old that was there and then gone so fast it might not have been real. Then they moved to Naruto and they stayed. Potter, Snape said, and then, Namikaze Potter. The second name was said in the tone of someone reading a complication into a plan, not angry, assessing. Professor, Naruto said. You're the brother, Snape said, the one who wasn't in the letter. Which letter? Snape's expression did something small and controlled. Quite. He moved on. But he glanced back twice during the lecture, each time at Naruto with the look of someone adding data to a running calculation, and Naruto found himself thinking that Snape was significantly more interesting than he'd expected, which was its own kind of complication. He asked Harry later what he made of Snape. He loved your mum, Harry said without preamble. Or he did once. You can see it every time he looks at you because you don't look like her the way I do and it's confusing him. Naruto stared at him. How do you get all of that from 30 minutes of potions? The way he doesn't look at me versus the way he doesn't look at you are completely different. That's very good. He's going to be difficult, Harry said, but not in a simple way. Keep that in mind. The first week settled them. Ron became permanent, not by announcement but by proximity, the way people become permanent in your life when they show up so consistently that absence starts feeling like a gap. Hermione became something adjacent to permanent, approaching it from a different direction, attaching herself to problems rather than people first and then realizing the problems came with people attached. And by Friday she'd worked out that the people were the better investment. Neville was quieter but present, always at the edge of the group with the wary energy of someone who'd been told repeatedly that he didn't have much to offer, and was starting to question that but hadn't finished questioning it yet. Naruto liked him with the instinctive, uncomplicated directness he liked most things, and when Neville's potion went wrong in potions on Thursday and Snape descended on him with the controlled cruelty of someone who'd identified a weak point and was testing it, Naruto said pleasantly and clearly from 2 seats over, "Mine went the same way. Something wrong with the lacewing flies." Snape looked at him. Naruto looked back. "There is nothing wrong with the lacewing flies," Snape said very precisely. "Okay," Naruto said pleasantly, "must be something else then." He looked at his own perfectly fine potion. "I'll figure it out." Snape studied him for a long moment with the expression of someone encountering a new piece in a game and not yet having decided what it was worth. Then he moved on. Neville 2 seats over looked at Naruto with an expression that was gratitude and something else, surprise maybe at the shape of the defense. It hadn't been aggressive, it had just been immovable. Harry across the table was looking at his cauldron and saying nothing, but the corner of his mouth was doing a thing. "What?" Naruto said. "Nothing," Harry said, "just you're good at that." "At what?" "Being a wall without making it a fight." Naruto considered this. "Seemed easier." "It is easier," Harry said. "Most people can't do it." On Friday evening, sitting in the common room with Ron arguing cheerfully about Quidditch strategy and Hermione reading loudly enough that her silence had the texture of commentary, Naruto pulled the brief introduction to chakra theory from his bag and opened it to the first page. Chakra, the book began, is not magic in the sense that Western practitioners understand it. It is not the manipulation of ambient force through focused intent. It is the fundamental energy produced by combining the physical energy of every cell in the body with the spiritual energy accumulated through experience and thought. It is not external. It cannot be inherited through bloodline alone. It must be cultivated through the practitioner's own body and mind, built over time, shaped through technique and will. He read until the fire in the common room burned low and everyone else had gone up to bed. Then he went upstairs and lay on his back in the dark and felt the pulse of Kurama's presence in his chest, deep and patient, and thought about the difference between a wand that channeled something outside you and chakra that was built from what was inside, and how he appeared to have both and what that meant. Questions, Kurama said from somewhere below thought. Always, Naruto said. Good. A pause. Questions are how your father got good at everything he did. What was he like, really? Kurama was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, the hostility that usually edged his voice when the subject came up was still there, but underneath it, barely audible, was something else. Fast, he said finally, faster than anything I'd ever encountered, and he never looked at me like I was a weapon, even when he was using me as one. He always looked at me like a person who'd been put in an impossible situation. Another pause. I found it insufferable. I still find it insufferable. It's considerably harder to hate someone who refuses to let you. Naruto looked at the ceiling. Get some sleep, Kurama said, getting there a beat. Thank you for tonight. What you showed the hat, I didn't do it for your benefit, I know. Good night, Kurama. A long silence. And then, quieter than Naruto had ever heard him, good night, boy. Chapter 4, What Lives in the Walls. October arrived like it had somewhere important to be. The castle changed with it, the torches burned lower and the shadows got longer and the staircases seemed to take roots they hadn't bothered with in September, as if the building itself was settling into a colder, more serious version of itself. The lake outside turned the color of old iron. The forbidden forest at the edge of the grounds went dark at 4 in the afternoon and stayed dark, and something in the treeline occasionally caught the moonlight at an angle that suggested movement without confirming it. Naruto loved it. He'd started running in the mornings, up before 6, out through the main doors before most of the castle was awake, around the lake twice at a pace that wasn't quite a sprint but wasn't casual either. He hadn't decided to start. He'd just woken up one morning in the second week of September with the feeling that his body was accumulating energy it didn't have anywhere to put, and running was the thing that suggested itself. By the third week, it was habit. By October it was ritual. Harry joined him sometimes. Not always. Harry's sleep was more complicated, older dreams that he didn't talk about much, and some mornings the right thing for him was to stay horizontal until the common room was quiet. But on the days he came, he matched Naruto's pace without effort, and they did the lake in silence because morning silence between them had always been its own kind of conversation. What Naruto was doing during the runs that he hadn't told anyone about yet, including Harry, was practicing. The chakra theory book had given him a framework, and the framework had given him a direction, and the direction had revealed that he'd been doing something instinctive and uncontrolled for 10 years that had an actual name and actual structure. He was building chakra the way the book described, not forcing it, not lighting things on fire, but sitting with the pulse of it every morning in the cold air by the lake while the sky went from black to gray to the specific pale gold of an early autumn dawn, and learning the difference between Kurama's chakra and his own. It was like learning to distinguish two instruments playing the same note. Same pitch, completely different texture. His own chakra was warm and steady, something he had to actively cultivate. Kurama's was immense and old and tidal, something he had to actively contain. The burn marks had always been Kurama's energy finding the gaps in a container that didn't know it was a container. Now that he knew what the container was, he could feel its shape. He could feel where it was stronger and where it needed work. Better, Kurama said, one morning in the third week of October when Naruto had managed to hold a sustained output of his own chakra in his hand for 40 seconds without either losing it or accidentally pulling from Kurama's reserve. Again. He did it again. 50 seconds. The air above his palm shimmered very faintly, no color. His own chakra undyed by the nine tails looked almost like heat haze over summer asphalt. Good, said Kurama. And coming from Kurama, good had the weight of a standing ovation. He told Harry about it on a Thursday morning when they came back from the lake and found the common room empty and sat in the chairs nearest the fire to warm up. He explained the distinction, his own chakra versus Kurama's, the container, the practice. Harry listened the way he listened to everything that mattered without interrupting, and when Naruto finished he was quiet for a moment. Can I see? Harry said. Naruto held out his hand, palm up, concentrated. The shimmer appeared, faint and honest, hovering just above his skin. Harry leaned forward and looked at it with the focused interest he brought to problems that genuinely engaged him. He didn't touch it. Does it feel different from the wand? Completely. The wand is like direction, you give it intent and it amplifies. This is just mine, it doesn't need the wand. Could you use both at once? Naruto looked at him. I have absolutely no idea. That's interesting, Harry said in his voice that meant he'd filed it under things to return to. You say that about everything. Most things are. The thing in the walls started in late October. Not literally, though the castle's walls did contain approximately as many things as you'd expect from a building that had been magically maintained for a millennium, and some of those things had opinions. What Naruto started noticing in the walls was more specific than ghosts or portraits. It was a presence, an attention. He noticed it first in the third-floor corridor. They hadn't gone there deliberately. What had happened was that Naruto had followed a sound, a low, rhythmic thudding from behind a locked door, the kind of sound that in any other context would suggest a very unhappy radiator, but in a magic castle suggested something considerably more interesting. And by the time he thought through the decision to investigate, he was already halfway down the corridor, and the sound was behind the door at the end, and he'd stopped in front of it. The door was locked. Something behind it was breathing. It was large breathing, the kind of breathing that required significant lung capacity. Naruto stood in front of the door with his hand not quite touching the handle and felt something prickle across his skin, not Kurama, not his own chakra, something that was coming from the other side of the door, animal and warm and territorial. He was still standing there when Harry appeared at the corridor entrance behind him. "I knew it," Harry said, already walking toward him. "I saw you leave the common room and I knew that face." "What face?" "The one where you've heard something and you've decided you need to know what it is before you've decided whether you should." "I always decide I should." "I know. That's the problem." Harry came and stood beside him and listened to the breathing. His expression shifted into something precise. "That's a dog," he said. "A big dog, a very big dog, 3 sets of breathing." He tilted his head. 3 heads. Naruto felt a grin arrive before he'd authorized it. "They've got a 3-headed dog up here. Guarding something, definitely guarding something." Naruto looked at the door, then at the corridor, then back. "3rd floor, they told us not to come here." "They told us not to come here if we didn't want to die painfully," Harry said, precise as ever, "which is a specific kind of warning. It's not there's nothing here, it's there's something here and it will hurt you if you're careless. So we don't be careless, we also don't be here right now." Harry turned and headed back down the corridor. "We're not ready." Naruto looked at the door one more time. Through it, 3 sets of lungs continued their slow, patient work. "Not yet," he agreed and followed Harry. They didn't tell Ron about the corridor, not because they were keeping it from him, but because telling Ron something was telling the Weasley twins something within 48 hours through some mechanism of Weasley family osmosis that Ron himself didn't seem to control. They told Hermione, because Hermione's response to information was to research it until it made sense, which was usually more useful than keeping it quiet. Her response was characteristically Hermione. She went pale, looked at them like they were both moderately insane, then went to the library and came back 4 hours later with 6 books and the specific expression of someone who'd found more than they'd bargained for. "It's a Cerberus," she said, spreading the books across the common room table. "Or something like one, but look," she pointed at a passage. "The way to get past a Cerberus has historically involved music. Any music, they fall asleep. It's a known weakness." "You went and found its weakness," Naruto said. "Of course I did. We just found out it existed an hour ago. I worked quickly." She folded her hands on the table. "Now tell me what it's guarding." "We don't know," Harry said. "The corridor is directly above the dungeons on the eastern side," Hermione said, which meant she'd already done the architectural math. "If something is buried under something that guarded, and the headmaster put it there, it's something brought here for safekeeping." "How do you know Dumbledore put it there?" "Because the alternative is that something else put a 3-headed dog in a school full of children, and that seems like something the headmaster would have noticed." She paused. "Unless someone put it there without his knowledge, in which case we have a larger problem." The 3 of them looked at each other. "It's Dumbledore's," Harry said. "Then what is it?" Naruto said. Nobody had an answer, so they tabled it, which in practice meant everyone continued thinking about it privately at all times while nominally focusing on other things. Quidditch happened at the end of October, which was the word Naruto would have used if pressed happened, because the sequence of events that led to it had the quality of something with its own momentum rather than anything planned. It started with a flying lesson, which was the first activity since the Hogwarts Express that had made Naruto feel straightforwardly, uncomplicated happy. He'd stepped onto the pitch with a school broomstick between his feet and set up, and the broom had come up so fast and with such commitment that he'd had to catch it one-handed to stop it connecting with his nose, which was not a great start but was at least an efficient one. In the air, something unlocked. The broom was fast the way the night bus had been fast, everything committed, nothing held back, but unlike the bus it was responsive. It went where he pointed it with a precision that made the air feel thick and slow, like there was more of it to work with up here than there was on the ground. He took it up to a height that technically exceeded what their instructor had specified and hung there for a moment, looking out over the castle and the lake and the forest, and felt Kurama go very quiet and very still in a way that felt like the fox was looking through his eyes. Well, Kurama said. Yeah, Naruto agreed. Harry, 30 feet to his left at a more regulation altitude, caught his eye with a look that said come down before someone notices, which was the look that was theoretically authoritative and practically useless as a deterrent because they both knew Naruto was going to come down when he was ready. He was ready after another 30 seconds, and he came down fast, pulling up at the last moment with a precision that made several nearby students produce sounds of alarm. Professor Hooch's expression had the quality of someone trying very hard not to be impressed. That altitude, she said, was not. I know, Naruto said. Sorry, got carried away. Hooch looked at him for a moment. Then, you've never flown before. First time. You're a natural, she said, in a tone that was simultaneously a compliment and a warning. That's not always a safe thing to be. What happened next was Draco Malfoy, which was sort of always the shape of things when Draco Malfoy was in the vicinity. He'd taken Neville's Remembrall and gone up in defiance of instructions, holding it up and saying things that were designed to be heard, and the shape of the situation was clear before it fully resolved. Neville was the target, the Remembrall was the mechanism, and Draco was performing for an audience of himself and anyone watching. McGonagall appeared from nowhere, the way she always appeared from nowhere, with the timing of someone who'd been in education long enough to develop a supernatural sense for the exact moment an incident was becoming an incident. She looked at the broom, at Harry who had gone up to retrieve the Remembrall and was now descending, at Naruto who was still on the ground and had been weighing the geometry of getting there faster. Potter, McGonagall said then with the fractional adjustment that everyone kept needing to make, Harry Potter, come with me. Harry landed. He looked at Naruto as he passed, with a look that was somewhere between this is fine and please don't do anything while I'm gone, and Naruto replied with a look that was technically in agreement but left significant room for interpretation. He came back 20 minutes later having been given the seeker position on the Gryffindor Quidditch team, which apparently nobody had ever gotten in their first year, which Harry seemed to regard as information rather than achievement. Seeker, Naruto said. Youngest in a century, how do you feel about that? Harry thought about it. Useful, he decided. Naruto got on the team 3 days later, through a different mechanism that was considerably more straightforward. He went to Wood, the Gryffindor captain, and told him he could fly, and Wood said there were no open positions, and Naruto said the beater position seemed undertrained from what he'd seen at practice. And Wood said the beaters were fine, and Naruto said with respect they absolutely weren't, and Wood said he didn't need an 11-year-old telling him how to run his team, and Naruto said he wasn't telling him anything, just offering. And Wood looked at him with the desperate intensity of a Quidditch captain facing a season and said, all right, show him. Naruto showed him. He became Gryffindor's third beater, technically outside the legal roster limit, officially listed as a reserve who practiced with the team and had never in the history of school Quidditch been permitted to play in a match. Wood looked at the rulebook with the expression of someone reading a legal document he badly needed to say the opposite of what it said. You could train with us, Wood said with the energy of a man compromising with reality. Unofficially. That works, Naruto said. You hit that bludger so hard it cracked, Wood said, still seeming to process it. I'll hit it softer next time, don't you dare. Halloween arrived with decorations that were somewhere between festive and genuinely alarming. Bats in the entrance hall, jack-o'-lanterns that moved, the staircases trailing something that might have been missed and might have been something with an opinion about foot traffic. The feast was enormous, and Ron was working through it with the single-minded commitment of someone who'd grown up at a large table where speed was a survival strategy. And Naruto was eating with the focused pleasure of someone who'd spent 10 years not getting enough food and still hadn't quite got over the novelty of abundance. And Harry was eating normally but watching the staff table with his peripheral attention active, which meant something was bothering him. What? Naruto said. Quirrell, Harry said without pointing or indicating in any way that would draw notice. He looks worse than last week. Naruto looked at the staff table with the casual ease of someone checking whether a dish was being refilled. Professor Quirrell was at the end of the table, purple turban wrapped around his head, and he did look worse, paler, more effortful, like he was putting energy into things that should have been automatic. His hands around his goblet were slightly too tight. He's always been like that, Ron said. Nervous type, He's something, Harry said. You think something's wrong with him, Naruto said. I think something's wrong near him, Harry said. The nervousness isn't him, it's what's beside him or behind him or he stopped. I don't know, I don't have enough information. What happened next eliminated any chance of gathering more information that night, because the doors to the Great Hall burst open and Professor Quirrell came in running, which was wrong, because Quirrell was already at the staff table, which meant the Quirrell at the door was not. It took Naruto half a second to recalibrate. The Quirrell at the table had been fine 2 minutes ago. The Quirrell at the door was pale and sweating and grabbed the first chair for support and said, in a voice that carried through the suddenly silent hall, "Thought you ought to know, there's a troll in the dungeons, thought you ought to know," and then fainted dramatically onto the floor. The hall erupted. Dumbledore's amplified voice cut through it with the precision of a surgeon. Prefects were to take students to dormitories. Teachers were deployed with a directness that suggested this was either genuine emergency response or an extremely well-drilled contingency plan, possibly both. In the controlled chaos of 100 students moving at once, Naruto caught Harry's eye. Harry had already thought of it. Naruto could tell from the way his expression shifted from the managed nothing to the specific focus of a decision made. Hermione, Harry said quietly. She didn't come to the feast. They'd had a row with Hermione earlier that week, or rather Ron had, in the particular way that Ron and Hermione had rows, which involved a lot of volume and very little actual communication, and Hermione had said something sharp and Ron had said something thoughtless, and Hermione had left and not come back. Naruto had felt bad about it all afternoon in a low-grade, ambient way. She's in the girls' bathroom, Naruto said. He'd seen her earlier going that way with the expression of someone choosing solitude over the alternative. Second floor. Troll, Harry said. Troll, Naruto agreed. Ron had heard. He'd gone the color of someone who'd realized something too late. Right, he said, with the look of a person accepting consequence with more grace than he'd been giving himself credit for. Right, let's go. They went against the current of students heading upward, which nobody stopped them doing because the teachers were busy with the actual emergency, and the prefects were managing the crowd, and the three of them moved with the particular efficiency of people who decided to do a thing, and were not stopping to explain it. They found Hermione on the second floor, not in the bathroom. She was in the corridor outside it, pressed against the wall, because the troll was currently in the bathroom and the door between them was the only thing creating the distance. It was enormous. Not large in the way of something bigger than expected. Enormous in the way that recategorized the room around it, made the ceiling look low, made the walls look close. 12 feet of gray-green skin and a wooden club the size of a young tree. And it was moving with the dumb purposefulness of something that had found a smell it was interested in following, which meant in about 30 seconds it was going to push through that door. Hermione, come on, Ron started. I can't, she said, and her voice was impressively steady for someone in her situation. I tried, it saw me, I ducked back. If I move, I'll move it, Naruto said. Harry looked at him, not with the are you sure look. They'd stopped having that conversation around age 8. The look he had now was the one that meant, tell me what you need from me. I need its attention on me, Naruto said. All of it, you get, Hermione. Ron, I can distract it, Ron said immediately. Can you? I've got an idea. He held up his wand with the energy of someone who'd just remembered something Hermione had taught them in charms 3 weeks ago. The troll chose that moment to push through the bathroom door, and the corridor became considerably smaller, and Hermione made a sound that was trying very hard not to be a scream. Naruto stepped forward. He didn't run at it, he just walked out to where the troll could clearly see him in the open middle of the corridor, with the unhurried calm of someone who had something extremely large living in their chest and had learned, gradually and productively, not to be afraid of large things. He looked up at the troll the way he'd looked at the snake at the zoo, the way he'd looked at Snape in Potions, direct, interested, without the fear that invited escalation. The troll looked at him. Something moved in its small eyes. Hey, Naruto said pleasantly. The troll swung its club. Naruto moved before the decision to move fully formed, sideways and forward under the arc of the swing, close enough that the displaced air from the club ruffled his hair, and he came up on the troll's other side without having done anything that looked particularly fast but having been in fact very fast. The troll turned, confused by the rearrangement. Naruto was already on the other side again. He wasn't hitting it. He wasn't even really fighting it. He was moving around it with the systematic efficiency of something learning the range and arc of the problem, cataloging where the edges were. Behind the troll, Harry had Hermione by the arm and they were backing toward the far end of the corridor. Ron was still near the bathroom door, wand up, running through the words Hermione had drilled into their charms class, Wingardium Leviosa, the simple levitation charm, not much on its own, but the club went up. Naruto didn't know if Ron had aimed it exactly or if luck had contributed, but the club levitated up out of the troll's hand with a lurch, hung in the air at ceiling height for a moment, and then came back down with the geometric inevitability of something that went up coming down, directly onto the troll's own head. The sound was both satisfying and slightly alarming. The troll sat down. Then with the graceless thoroughness of something too large to do anything gracefully, it fell over sideways and occupied most of the corridor. Naruto stood in the space next to it and looked at Ron. Ron looked at his wand, then at the troll, then at his wand again. That was the levitation charm, he said with the expression of someone discovering that a thing they've been doing for 3 weeks has practical applications. Nice aim, Naruto said. I wasn't entirely aiming, Ron admitted. Still worked. Harry and Hermione came back from the end of the corridor. Hermione looked at the troll, then at Naruto, then at Ron, and her expression did several things in quick succession. When it settled, it was something surprised and warm and slightly appalled at itself for being warm because Hermione Granger had a complicated relationship with the discovery that she liked people. Ron, she said. Yeah, Ron said, already bracing. That was, she stopped, restarted. The angle of the levitation was excellent. The charm timing was, you can just say it was good, Naruto said. Hermione looked at him with the expression of someone whose simplification has been correctly identified. Then, to Ron, it was good. Ron went slightly pink in a way that had nothing to do with embarrassment, and everything to do with not knowing what to do with that particular kind of recognition from that particular person. Thanks, he said, and managed not to say anything else, which was itself an achievement. The teachers arrived at approximately the right moment to find 4 first-years standing next to an unconscious troll, in a way that generated a lot of questions with complicated answers. Naruto let Harry handle most of the explanation, which Harry did with a precision and selectivity that technically contained no lies and produced a version of events that was complete enough to satisfy and simplified enough to avoid follow-up. McGonagall looked at them with the expression of someone caught between relief and something more complicated. Quirrell looked at Naruto. It was a look that lasted only a second and he looked away fast, but in that second Naruto felt something wrong with it, not Quirrell's eyes but the thing behind them, not nervous, calculating. Kurama said nothing. But Naruto felt him shift, somewhere deep, the way a guard dog shifts when a smell arrives that it hasn't categorized yet. He filed the look away, didn't say anything that night, but he didn't stop thinking about it. November. He was running alone that morning, Harry having stayed behind with a headache that was the architectural kind, the kind that meant too many dreams pressing against the inside of his skull. It happened sometimes. Naruto had learned not to make it a thing, which was what Harry needed. The lake was flat and dark and cold, and Naruto was on his 3rd circuit, his breath coming in white clouds, his pace somewhere past comfortable, and the chakra practice was running alongside the run the way it always did now, not deliberate, just present. His own energy maintaining itself at a level he'd started thinking of as warm idle. He stopped. He stopped without deciding to stop, the way you stop when something outside the normal frequency of your attention registers. He was on the north side of the lake, farthest from the castle, where the tree line of the forbidden forest came closest to the water's edge. He stood still and breathed and waited. The dream came. Not a dream exactly, he was awake and the world stayed real around him, but it was the same quality as a dream, the same rules. He was in a space that was too large to be inside anything, and the light was red-orange, and the thing he'd been seeing in dreams since he was 7 was there. Kurama, not the voice, not the sense of presence, the thing itself. He was enormous in the way that made the word enormous feel inadequate, 9 tails spreading behind him, each one the size of a motorway, and his fur the deep red-brown of banked coals, and his eyes exactly as Naruto had always seen them in the dreams, amber gold, ancient, holding a weight of years and anger and something underneath both of those things that was harder to name. They looked at each other, and neither of them said anything for a moment. Then Kurama said in the voice that was simultaneously inside him and everywhere in this space, "You should know what I am, all of it, not the parts I've been letting through." "Okay," Naruto said out loud on the north bank of the Hogwarts Lake alone in the cold November morning. "I am a tailed beast, one of 9. I was created or shaped or became. The distinction is philosophical from the energy of something that existed before me, something that wanted the world to be understood through power. I am the largest of 9 because I carry the most chakra of any living thing on the planet. What I am is not evil. I am not a demon. I am a force and forces are not moral until they act through a person and the person gives them direction. A pause. I have been used as a weapon. I have been controlled, directed, aimed. I have destroyed things. I am capable of destroying, he stopped, considerable things. I know, Naruto said, your father put me in you because it was the only option he had that kept both you and the world intact. He gave me a host who was his son, which was not a decision he made lightly and which I resented profoundly. Do you still? A long pause. Naruto stood on the bank and watched the flat water and waited. Less, Kurama said finally, I resent it less than I did. He seemed to find the admission inconvenient. You are not what I expected. You are, inconveniently, someone I don't want to see harmed. Naruto felt something warm move through him that had nothing to do with chakra. Don't make it sentimental, Kurama said sharply. I'm not, Naruto said smiling. The thing in the school, Kurama said, switching direction with the abruptness of something changing the subject before feelings became a structural problem. The presence you've been feeling. There is something in that castle that does not belong there, something old and displaced and very hungry. In the walls, Naruto said, not the walls, in a person, or sharing a person. I can feel it when you're close enough. I should have said something sooner, but he stopped. I was uncertain. I am rarely uncertain and I find it irritating. Quirrell, Naruto said, the nervous one, yes, what is it? Something that was once a person, Kurama said slowly. Something that wants to be a person again. It is powerful and patient and it is looking for something in the school. His voice dropped into the register that meant he was being precise rather than rhetorical. And it has noticed you, Naruto, not Harry, you. It felt what I am and it recognized something related to its own ambition and it is watching. Naruto stood on the bank for a long moment, looking at the castle across the lake. The towers were catching the early morning light, pale gold against pale sky, enormous and real. What does it want? He said. What everything like it always wants, Kurama said, to not be dying. To not be finished, to continue, a pause. It is willing to do considerable damage to achieve that. And it's in Quirrell. It is wearing Quirrell. Naruto thought about the look. The second of calculation behind the nervous professor's eyes, the wrong thing behind the right face. He turned and ran back toward the castle, and this time his pace was faster and the warmth in his chest was active rather than idle, and Kurama was quiet in the way he was quiet when he was ready. Harry needed to know. They needed to think. They needed to figure out what was under that trapdoor on the third floor before whatever was wearing Quirrell's face got there first. The castle grew as he ran toward it, every window lit gold in the morning, every tower solid against the pale sky, and Naruto ran like he had somewhere to be because he did. Chapter 5. The mirror and the seal. Harry already knew something was wrong when Naruto came through the portrait hole at a pace that wasn't quite running but wasn't walking either, still in his outdoor clothes, cold air coming off him like a weather system. He was sitting in the armchair nearest the fire with the chakra theory book open on his knee, not reading it, using it as a prop while he actually thought, and he looked up and read Naruto's face in the time it took Naruto to cross the common room. Sit down, Harry said. I don't want to sit down. Sit down anyway, you think better when you're not moving. This was both true and slightly annoying, which was a combination Harry deployed with surgical precision. Naruto sat. He pulled his knees up and wrapped his arms around them and told Harry everything, Kurama's voice at the lake, what the fox had said about Quirrell, the thing wearing a person's face, the hunger behind it, the fact that it had noticed Naruto specifically. Harry listened without interrupting. When Naruto finished, Harry closed the book and set it on the floor and looked at the fire for about 20 seconds. Quirrell, he said, yeah. The look he gave you after the troll. Yeah, I clocked that, Harry said. I didn't have enough to say anything. He paused. Something wearing a person. What does Kurama think it is? Something that was human once, something that wants to keep existing and is running out of ways to do it. Harry processed that. Voldemort, he said, the way he said everything flatly, matter-of-factly as a statement rather than a thing to be afraid of. Naruto looked at him. You're not surprised. I've been thinking about the third-floor corridor since October, Harry said. Whatever is under that trapdoor, Dumbledore put it there. He brought it here specifically this year. The same year letters go out for us. That's not coincidence, that's either protection or a trap, and knowing what I know about Dumbledore, I think it's probably both. He looked up from the fire. If something wants what's under that trapdoor, and if the something that wants it is Voldemort or what's left of him, then we need to know what it is before he gets to it. How do we find out? Hermione, they both said at the same time. Hermione, when presented with the problem at breakfast, went through 3 distinct emotional phases in under a minute. First, the face of someone being asked to do something that might break a rule. Second, the face of someone realizing the scale of the problem exceeded the relevance of the rule. Third, the face of someone who had already been thinking about this and was relieved to have external permission to think about it out loud. "The stone," she said quietly, leaning over the table so her voice didn't carry. "I think it's the Philosopher's Stone. Nicholas Flamel. I read about him weeks ago and then it vanished from my head because I couldn't place where, and then last week I found the connection. He's the only known maker of a Philosopher's Stone. He's over 600 years old. The stone produces the elixir of life," she paused. "For something that's lost its body and needs to continue existing. It's exactly what Voldemort would want," Harry said. The table went quiet, not the whole great hall, just their corner of it, the five of them, because Ron and Neville were both there and both had heard and both were doing different versions of processing. Ron went pale and then visibly decided not to be pale because being pale wasn't useful. Neville made a small sound and then looked at his eggs with the expression of someone wishing he'd sat somewhere else and then deciding he didn't actually wish that. "Right," Ron said. "So, that's the thing under the trapdoor." "That's what we think," Harry said. "Quirrell is compromised," Naruto said. "Voldemort's using him somehow, sharing his body, or Kurama doesn't know exactly, but he's in there." Ron put down his fork. He was doing the Weasley thing where stubbornness reasserted itself over fear, visibly like watching a tide come in. "So what do? We find out everything we can about the protections on the stone," Harry said, "without triggering anything or telling anyone who might report back to Dumbledore before we're ready." "Why not tell Dumbledore?" Neville said carefully. "Because Dumbledore already knows," Naruto said. "Whatever game is being played here, he's playing it too. I don't think he's on the wrong side. But I think he's got a plan that doesn't fully account for us, and I'd rather know the whole board before we show him our pieces." Neville thought about that, nodded once with more decisiveness than Neville usually deployed, like something had resolved for him. "Okay," he said. "What do you need me to do?" December arrived and the castle began emptying for Christmas. Most students went home. The Weasleys stayed, all of them, which meant the common room maintained a population density and noise level that was festive by anyone's standard. Hermione went home to her parents, but not before leaving a 12-page summary of every protection she'd been able to infer about the stone based on the teachers she'd identified as contributors and the nature of their specialties. She handed it to Harry at the station with the no-nonsense efficiency of a general departing a field of operations. "Dumbledore's involvement will be at the end," she said. "Whatever he's put there, it'll be the final layer. It'll be the one none of us can solve by being clever." She paused. "I mean by being clever in the normal way." "What's the abnormal way?" Ron said. "Being something other than clever," she said with a look at Naruto, and then she was through the barrier and gone. Ron watched the space she'd been standing in. "She's very—" "Yes," said Naruto. "I was going to say particular. That too." Christmas at Hogwarts was quiet in the way that large spaces are quiet when the usual population has left, not empty but differently occupied, the castle's sounds changing register, its personality showing different aspects. Naruto woke on Christmas morning to find presents at the foot of his bed that he still wasn't entirely used to finding, and sat up and opened them in the gray morning light. Ron had gotten him a collection of Quidditch cards, the beaters specifically, with a note that said for research. Harry had gotten him a new practice set of kunai from a catalog he'd found through the Namikaze vault correspondence, black steel, weighted perfectly, matching the set behind the case in the vault. There were 3. He held one and felt its balance and put it down very carefully and picked up the note that came with it. "You mentioned them," the note said in Harry's close handwriting. "You didn't say you wanted them, you didn't have to." The Dursleys had sent nothing, but they never had, and it had never been that kind of absence. It was just the ordinary shape of that relationship, which had always been a practical arrangement rather than an effective one. There was one package he didn't recognize. Small, wrapped in silver paper, no tag. He opened it and found a vial of something dark blue-black that moved like liquid but seemed thicker, more intentional, like ink that knew what it wanted to write. Beneath it, a small folded note in the indigo script he was beginning to recognize, and below that, in English in a different hand, cramped and quick, ink for the scroll. It will translate itself when applied. 1 drop on each line, don't rush it, K.H. Kakashi Headache. Naruto stared at the note for a moment, then at the vial, then out the dormitory window at the white December grounds. "He's been watching," Kurama said. "From where?" "Far away, but watching." A pause. "He was your father's student. He takes that seriously." Naruto tucked the vial carefully into his trunk and thought about what far away meant to someone from a world parallel to this one. Harry came in from the bathroom and looked at the spread of presents and said, "Anything interesting?" Naruto held up the note. Harry read it, and his expression did the thing it did when data arrived that rearranged other data, a small internal reorganization, visible only if you knew what to look for. "He can get things into Hogwarts," Harry said. "Yeah, through the owls, maybe, or through something else entirely." Naruto looked at the vial. He's more connected to this world than I thought, or he has someone connected to it. Harry sat on his own bed and looked at his present pile, and at the top was something under an invisibility cloak that turned out, when he opened it, to be an invisibility cloak. He held it up and it caught the gray light and disappeared into it, and his hands vanished with it, and both of them were quiet for a moment at the sheer practical fact of it. Useful, Naruto said. Extremely. Harry read the note that came with it. His face went very still. It was my father's, he said. Naruto didn't say anything. Harry needed a moment with that. After a while Harry said, use your new kunai or the ones from the vault. Vault ones are better balanced, Naruto said. These are training weight, show me the difference. They spent the morning on the grounds in the snow, which was Naruto's first real opportunity to work with the kunai under open conditions, not practice, not theory, but the actual geometry of throwing a balanced blade at a distance through cold air. His body knew more than he'd taught it. The instinct was there already, baked in, the same way the broom had felt natural, and he spent an hour working through the motion until it stopped being instinct and became precision, which was a different and more useful thing. Harry watched from the side for 20 minutes before saying anything. You're compensating for the cold on the throw. Am I? Your release is a fraction later than it should be. The blade is hitting slightly low. Naruto made the adjustment. The next throw was clean. Better, Harry said. Where did you get that from? I watched you for 20 minutes. You do that, it's useful. Harry picked up a kunai and turned it over in his hands. Can I try? Do you have any experience with number? Then you're going to. Harry threw it. It went wide, significantly in a direction that was more enthusiasm than geometry, and buried itself in the snow about 6 feet from the target. Harry looked at it, then at his hand, then at Naruto. Tell me what I did wrong, he said. Naruto told him. They spent another hour on it. Harry's throws got considerably better, which was the result of having excellent spatial reasoning and being willing to receive correction without defensiveness. And by the time they went in for lunch he was hitting the target about a third of the time, which was not good but was better than it should have been for someone an hour in. Ron met them in the entrance hall covered in snow from a snowball fight with his brothers and took one look at them and said, What have you been doing? Training, Naruto said. For what? Harry and Naruto looked at each other. General preparedness, Harry said. Ron looked between them. Right, he said, in the tone of someone accepting that the full answer was going to arrive eventually and deciding to be patient about it. They found the mirror that night. It wasn't intentional, they were using the invisibility cloak to explore, which Harry had immediately identified as its primary non-emergency application, and they were 3 floors up in a part of the castle that was mostly closed for the holidays when Naruto felt it. Not the wrongness from the 3rd floor corridor. Not the calculating attention he'd started feeling whenever Quirrell was nearby. This was different, a pull, a warmth, something that resonated at a frequency he hadn't encountered before, personal rather than threatening, oriented rather than ambient. He pushed open the door it was behind. The room was empty except for the mirror. It stood against the far wall in the torchlight, taller than a door framed in gold with an inscription arcing across the top. Eris stra eru oit ube kafru oidan wosi. Naruto stepped in front of it. What he saw was not what he expected. He'd expected his parents, the absent shape of them, the imagined faces, the obvious thing. But the mirror showed him something more specific and somehow more true. He was standing in the reflection, and beside him was Harry, and behind them both were 2 figures he recognized from the scroll's fragment of translated description. Tall, blonde, one hand raised in the shadow of a half-wave, and a red-haired woman with her arm around a dark-haired man who looked so much like Harry it was startling. And around all of them was not a place but a state, the quality of a world in which everybody who should have been there was, and the gap of all the absent people was closed. And in the corner of the reflection, barely visible but there, 2 eyes, amber gold, 9 feet apart. Naruto looked at the mirror for a long time. Don't stand there too long, Kurama said, and his voice was very gentle in a way it almost never was. I know what you're seeing, don't let it be more real than what is. I know, Naruto said out loud. What do you see? Harry said from behind him. Naruto stepped back and let Harry take his place. He watched Harry's face in the torchlight, watched it do the thing it did when Harry's defenses came down, the unguarded expression, the one that only existed before Harry remembered to manage it. It lasted about 4 seconds looking at the mirror. My parents, Harry said. Alive, yeah, and you, and people I don't know, your parents maybe, yeah. Harry stepped back from the mirror with the deliberate efficiency of someone removing themselves from a thing they've identified as dangerous. He turned away from it and looked at Naruto. We shouldn't come back here, Harry said. Number, it shows you what you want most. Yeah, that's not information, that's a trap. It's both, Naruto said. Doesn't mean it's not also true. He glanced at the mirror one more time. But yeah, we don't come back. They went back through the door and Harry put on the cloak and they walked in silence for a while, through corridors that were quiet and stone and real. And after a few minutes Naruto said, "You okay?" "I've been not okay about my parents since I was old enough to understand not okay," Harry said, without weight, just fact. "The mirror is new information about the shape of it, not the existence of it." A pause. "You?" Same answer. They walked the rest of the way to Gryffindor Tower without talking, and when they got back Harry went to sleep fairly quickly and Naruto lay awake thinking about the amber eyes in the corner of the mirror, the ones he hadn't mentioned to Harry, and what it meant that what he wanted most already included Kurama. January brought everyone back, and with them a collective energy that had more edge to it, like the break had given everyone's attention a chance to refocus on things they'd been avoiding. Naruto felt it particularly in how Quirrell occupied space. The professor moved through the school with the same nervous surface energy, same turban, same deflective stuttering, but underneath it something had sharpened. The calculating attention had more urgency behind it now. Whatever was wearing Quirrell's face was getting closer to what it was looking for, or getting more impatient about finding it, or both. He told Harry. Harry had felt it too. They went to the library. Not for fun, Naruto had come to a fond understanding with the library over the past months, but his relationship to it was always purposive rather than ambient. He needed a specific thing, and libraries were where specific things lived when they weren't actively being used. What he needed now was everything available about Voldemort's history, what had happened on Halloween 10 years ago, what exactly had survived, how. Most of the books were unhelpful in the way that institutional history is unhelpful. They recorded events without examining mechanisms, they described outcomes without explaining processes. He found one book, old and poorly filed, that was more direct. It was called Dark Arts, Survivability and the Limits of Magic, and it was apparently not considered dangerous enough for the restricted section, which suggested whoever had filed it had never actually read it. He found what he needed on page 312. The darkest practitioners of the last 5 centuries, the book said, in the dry academic voice of something that had stopped being surprised by what people would do to avoid dying, have repeatedly sought to circumvent the permanent nature of death through the partitioning of the soul. The soul, understood as the fundamental source of magical identity and will, is in theory divisible not by accident, but through deliberate acts of extreme spiritual violence. An individual who has killed, specifically, deliberately, ritually, tears something fundamental in themselves. This tear can be exploited. A piece of the soul, separated, can anchor the rest of the person's magical identity to the material world, even in the event of the body's destruction. Naruto read the passage twice. Then he went back to the beginning and read it again more slowly. An anchor, he thought. He made anchors. He brought the book to Harry, who was at a table near the window with Hermione, who'd come to the library independently, because Hermione's January had apparently also involved following a similar thread. She had a different book, older, more heavily annotated in a handwriting that was neither hers nor any of theirs. "Someone's been here before us," Hermione said when Naruto sat down. She turned the book to show him the margin notes, careful, deliberate, in a dark green ink. "These notes are decades old. They're finding the same conclusions," Harry said. He'd apparently already looked at it. "Whoever was here before us was working out the same mechanism. One of Voldemort's teachers maybe," Naruto said, "or an enemy who was trying to understand him. Or Dumbledore," Harry said, and the word landed quietly but with weight, the way Harry's words often did. None of them said anything for a moment. "The stone," Hermione said eventually. "If he's anchored to the world, if part of him is still here, he can still act. He still has will and intent even without a body. He needs the stone to come back fully." "He needed Quirrell to get to the stone," Naruto said, "and he's been working on Quirrell all year." He paused. "Quirrell's breaking down." "You can tell," Hermione said. "Kurama can feel the pressure on Quirrell's, I don't know the word, his fundamental self. He's being consumed." Hermione went very pale. She stopped. "We need to know what the last protection is, the one that we assume is Dumbledore's. We need to find out what Quirrell's already got past," Harry said. "How?" Harry looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at the table. "The scroll," he said, not aloud to himself. "The Namikaze scroll, Kurama, you translated part of it, the sealed diagrams." "Yes," Kurama said. "Are any of them useful? For locking something away, containing something so that the wrong person can't reach it?" A pause. "Your father was the foremost seal master of his generation. What's in that scroll is considerably more sophisticated than anything this school has produced." A longer pause. "There are 3 seals in the early sections I've been considering telling you about. Why haven't you? Because knowing them means being able to use them. And using them means becoming visible to things that haven't fully noticed you yet. A beat. The thing in Quirrell has noticed you, but there are other things, older things, I didn't want to. He stopped. I was being cautious on your behalf. Kurama, I know. I know, you don't need caution on your behalf, you need information. A sound like something very large exhaling. Yes, the seals, I'll show you. What Kurama showed him was not words but understanding, the way knowledge transferred between them, not language but the shaped comprehension of something, the blueprint of an intent written in the logic of chakra. 3 sealing techniques, each one a different function, one that created a container, one that created a lock, one that created a barrier tied to the specific nature of the person behind it. Inherently personal, only crossable with genuine and unmixed intent. Naruto sat at the library table and absorbed the knowledge and felt it settle into him like water finding its level, and when he came back to the surface properly, Harry was watching him with the careful attention he reserved for Naruto's internal dialogue moments. Got something, Harry said. Got 3 somethings. Naruto looked at his hands. He could feel the seal shapes in his fingers the way you feel a word you've just learned, new but immediately native. I need to practice them, quietly. Away from everyone. The Quidditch pitch, Harry said immediately. After 9, it's empty. I'll come, Hermione said. They both looked at her. I can observe and note the results, she said, with the dignity of someone not acknowledging that she was also just curious. And if something goes wrong, I can get help. Nothing's going to go wrong, Naruto said. You have a 9-tailed fox in your chest and you're practicing your dead father's sealing techniques at night, Hermione said pleasantly. I'm coming. The Quidditch pitch at night was cold and enormous and empty in a way that felt generous rather than lonely. All that space, no expectation of what to do with it. Naruto stood in the center with Harry and Hermione at a distance that was respectful of the blast radius without being insulting, and he thought about what Kurama had shown him and he began. The first seal was the container. He needed ink, the blue-black ink from the Namikaze vault, the vial from Kakashi's Christmas package. He drew it on his left palm not from memory but from the understanding Kurama had given him, which was better than memory because it included the reason for each stroke, the logic of the shape, the way each line contributed to the whole. His hand was steady. The ink didn't smear. When he closed his fist, the air around his hand compressed. Not dramatically, not visibly, except to Hermione, who had her wand lit and was watching with the intense focus she brought to something she'd never seen before. But the seal was active. He could feel it working, a quiet, intelligent containment operating at the level of what Kurama had called the fundamental, the place where soul and substance met. He released it. He did the second one. The lock, this one went on the back of the right hand, more complex, the strokes requiring a sequence that had to be held in mind like a musical phrase, each line unlocking the potential of the next. When it activated, he felt it click into place like a bolt sliding home. What is that? Hermione said from the boundary of her self-imposed distance. She was moving closer involuntarily, pulled by the sheer novelty of a technique that operated entirely outside her framework. That's not magic, it's not wand magic. What is that? Fuinjutsu, Naruto said from the half-conscious space of active practice. Sealing arts, my father's. He released the lock and looked at his hand. Chakra-based, completely different mechanism from wizard magic. And you can do both, apparently, simultaneously. He looked at her, he looked at the wand in his jacket pocket, he looked at his hands. I haven't tried, he said. Don't try tonight, Harry said from behind Hermione. He'd come closer too. Save new experiments for when we're not already testing limits. Sensible, Hermione said. He hates when I'm sensible, Harry said to her. I don't hate it, Naruto said. You prefer to find the limit and then find out what's past it. That's just efficient, that's one word for it. Harry looked at the seal diagrams on Naruto's palms, faint in the torchlight. Can you put them somewhere? Not just on your hands, somewhere fixed, like the trapdoor. Naruto looked at the ground, then at Harry. Then he understood what Harry was building toward. If Quirrell gets through the protections already there, Harry said, and gets to the stone, if Dumbledore's protection is the last line and Voldemort breaks it. A seal on the stone itself, Naruto said. Or on the chamber, something that responds to intent. The third technique, it locks against anything that approaches with the wrong motivation. Can you put it there without being detected? If I do it quietly. Without using wand magic, without anything that registers on the castle's magical infrastructure. He paused. Kurama? It is possible, Kurama said. Your Fuinjutsu operates on chakra, not ambient magic. The castle's wards are not designed to detect it. It would be invisible to the systems in place. When, Harry said. Soon, Naruto said. We need to know the layout first, all of it, every protection between the trapdoor and the stone. Hermione's got the protections mapped, Harry said. They both looked at her. I have a working theory, Hermione said with the slight defensiveness of someone whose working theory is very good and knows it. Fluffy, we know. Below that, I think it's a sequence. Different teachers. I've been working backwards from their specialties. She pulled a folded parchment from her robes. It was dense with notes, diagrams, arrows connecting things. Sprout will have Devil's Snare. Flitwick's contribution is likely a key charm, something that requires logic or flight. Snape almost certainly has a potions puzzle. And Dumbledore's, Harry said. Something that has nothing to do with magic, she said. Something that depends on the person. The mirror, Naruto said. Harry went still. The mirror of Eris, Naruto said. Think about it. If someone wants the stone to use it, really wants it for themselves, they'll see themselves using it. They'll try to take it from the reflection and get nothing. But someone who wants to find it without using it, sees themselves finding it, Harry said slowly, and gets the real thing. Dumbledore put the stone in the mirror, Hermione breathed. That's actually elegant. It's smart, Harry said, but it only works against someone with a specific motivation. Against someone who's more complicated than that, he looked at Naruto. Then we need the seal, Naruto said. On the mirror, below the mirror, before the mirror, something that Voldemort can't cross regardless of what face he's wearing or what story he tells about his own intent. He'll feel it, Harry said. Whatever is using Quirrell, it'll feel the seal go down. Let it, Naruto said. Let it know there's something it can't get through. That's useful information. It might change how it moves. It might accelerate it, Harry said. Yeah, Naruto met his eyes, which means we need to be ready to move fast, both of us, everything we've got. Harry looked at him for a long moment, and something in the night air between them had the quality of a decision being made without needing to be spoken. They'd been making decisions that way since before they had language for it. Some understandings were older than words. When do we go? Harry said. 1 more week, Naruto said. I need a week to work through the seal sequences until I can do them right the first time in the dark. 1 week, Harry agreed. They walked back to the castle, the three of them through grass that crunched with frost. And above them the sky was enormous and full of stars that had been there for longer than anything in the world below them had managed to be. And Naruto looked up at it and felt the warmth in his chest and the seal shapes in his hands and the wand against his ribs, and thought about his father standing in the dark a decade ago and choosing what to do with the power he had. He thought, I understand now. I understand why you chose what you did. And Kurama, quiet and steady as bedrock at the base of everything, said nothing, which was itself an answer. They went on a Thursday. Not because Thursday was special, because by Thursday Naruto had done the seal sequences in the dark with his eyes closed until they were as natural as breathing, and because on Thursday morning Kurama had gone very still at breakfast when Quirrell walked through the hall and had said quietly and with the absolute certainty of something ancient that knew what it was smelling, tonight. He moves tonight. They didn't discuss it at breakfast. They ate. They went to class. They were in all the places they were supposed to be until after dinner, and then they were in the common room until the fire burned low and Ron's eyes got heavy. And then they were at the portrait hole with the invisibility cloak and the wand and the kunai and the seal ink and everything they were. Ron caught them at the portrait hole. Not by accident, he was sitting in the chair nearest it with his arms folded and the expression of someone who'd been waiting. He looked at the cloak, at the kunai, at Naruto's belt, at Harry's wand already in hand, and his chin did the thing it did when he'd made a decision. I'm coming, he said. Ron, Harry started. I'm coming, Ron said pleasantly and absolutely. We're going to the 3rd floor corridor. He said it as a statement of fact, not a question. I'm coming. Naruto looked at him, then at Harry. Harry looked at Ron for a moment, reading him with the quick precision that was his particular gift, and what he read apparently concluded in Ron's favor because he stepped back from the portrait hole and gestured. Under the cloak, Harry said, 3 of us is tight. I've had practice with tight, Ron said, from a family of 8 in a house that had always needed to be bigger than it was. They went through the portrait hole and into the dark corridor, and behind them the common room's fire burned low, and the castle breathed around them, and somewhere below them something old and hungry was moving toward what it wanted. And above the ground floor in his office, a silver instrument was spinning with an urgency it hadn't managed in weeks, and Albus Dumbledore was not there to see it because he was on his way to London for reasons that had seemed pressing enough to leave for, and by the time he returned the board would have changed entirely. Naruto felt Quirrell the moment they were in the corridor, not saw, not heard. Felt through Kurama's awareness, the specific wrongness of what rode behind the nervous professor's eyes, present and focused and already past the trapdoor already below. He looked at Harry. Harry looked back. He's already down there, Naruto said. Then we go now, Harry said. Naruto put his hand on the trapdoor and felt the seal he'd laid 2 days ago, patient and waiting, a bright note of chakra in the dark. It recognized him, opened for him. The breathing below was enormous and threefold. "Fluffy," Ron said. "Asleep," Naruto said. He could hear it, 3 sets of lungs, slow and deep, and somewhere in the dark the faint remnant of music. Quirrell already played something, we go. They went through the trapdoor and into the dark, and the dark caught them and held them, and below them the protections waited, and below the protections the stone waited, and below the stone the oldest calculation in the school was finally resolving. They dropped. Chapter 6. Past the 3rd floor door. The devil's snare grabbed them the moment they landed. It came from every direction simultaneously, vines that moved with the specific intelligence of something that had been waiting and was very good at its job, wrapping around wrists and ankles with a grip that was cold and purposeful. In the dark below the trapdoor it was almost impossible to see, just the sensation of it, the progressive tightening. Ron made a sound of alarm. Naruto felt a vine close around his left forearm and another around his ankle, and he went completely still, which was the counterintuitive thing, the thing most people couldn't manage when something was restricting them. "Don't fight it," Hermione's voice somewhere to his left. She'd come through the trapdoor behind them, which nobody had told her to do and nobody was going to argue about now. "It tightens when you struggle, it relaxes in heat and light. Can you make light?" Harry said from Naruto's right. His voice was steady. "Yes," a pause, then the specific sound of someone doing wandwork in a tight space. "Bluebell flames." The light came, blue and cold-looking but genuinely warm, Hermione holding it in her palm with the focused ease of someone who'd practiced the charm until it was as reliable as breathing. And in the blue light the devil's snare shrank back from them with the visible distaste of something that has evolutionary opinions about fire. Naruto was already free. He'd felt the plant relax around his forearm by a fraction and had rotated his wrist precisely through the gap before it could close again, the way you'd work a lock. Ron pulled free a second later, less elegantly but effectively. Harry stepped out of the last clinging tendril with the calm of someone stepping over a puddle. "Forward," Harry said. They ran. The corridor below the trapdoor was stone and low-ceilinged and lit by torches that threw orange light at irregular intervals. And ahead of them the sounds changed, from the breathing dark of the devil's snare chamber to something that had the quality of motion, of mechanism, something in the air that was alive in a different and more complex way. The next chamber had wings. They filled the room from floor to ceiling, hundreds of them, small and sharp and moving with the frantic collective energy of a murmuration. Except these weren't birds, they were keys, brilliant magical keys in every color the spectrum owned, and they moved too fast to follow individually, which was the point. On the far wall a door. In the lock of the door, nothing, because the right key was somewhere in the 1,000-strong cloud above them, and the door was not interested in being cooperative. "Brooms," Ron said, pointing, 3 school broomsticks leaning against the wall, left for this exact purpose. Naruto was already on one, Harry was beside him. Ron took the third. "Look for the one with bent feathers," Harry said, scanning upward, and his eyes were doing the thing where they moved quickly through a complex scene and extracted the relevant information with an efficiency that shouldn't have been possible from the ground with 1,000 moving objects above them. "Old. It'll have been tried before. Whoever designed this left a way through, which means repeated use. Bent feathers." He was in the air before he finished the sentence. Naruto went up alongside him and immediately widened his search area, going to the opposite side of the chamber because covering the whole space divided by 2 was twice as fast as covering half of it each. "There," Kurama said, and Naruto's eyes snapped to a key near the upper left corner, old silverblue with one feather crumpled slightly out of alignment where someone or something had grabbed it before. He went for it with the full speed of 6 weeks of unofficial beater training. Not the catching motion of a seeker, but the interception geometry of someone who understood how fast things could move and what angle made the difference. He caught it one-handed and came down fast and had it in the door before Harry had completed his arc back toward the ground. The lock turned. The door opened. Harry landed and looked at the key in the door and looked at Naruto. "Upper left corner," he said. "Yeah, I was going right. I know, that's why I went left." Ron landed behind them slightly harder than intended and made a face at his own landing and said nothing about it. "Next one," he said, already moving. The chess room was the one that stopped them. Not because it was the most dangerous, though it was dangerous. The pieces were enormous, carved from black and white stone, and they moved with an autonomy and intelligence that made it clear they'd been enchanted to play at a level that took winning seriously. The board was the width of the chamber. The only way forward was through it. Naruto looked at the board and felt honest uncertainty for the first time since the trapdoor, because chess was a thing he played badly and enjoyed anyway, which was a personality trait but not a useful skill at this exact moment. Harry looked at the board for 30 seconds. Then he looked at Ron. Ron was looking at the board with an expression Naruto had only seen on him in very specific contexts, the same expression he wore when someone mentioned his family, or when Hermione said something he unexpectedly found beautiful. It was the expression of something coming home. "I can play this," Ron said, not to anyone in particular, just a statement of fact. "I know," Harry said, "it's yours." Something passed between them that was quick and complete, the way things pass between people who have started to know each other at the level below ordinary knowing. Ron straightened his spine and walked onto the board and stood in the space where the knight was, and the knight moved to make room for him with the smooth inevitability of a piece that recognized a player. "You'll need to be pieces," Ron told them. "Bishop," he said to Harry. "Castle," to Naruto. "Hermione," "Queen," Hermione said, already moving. "Don't let her, I won't." She stepped into the queen's space with a composure that would have been alarming if it hadn't been so characteristically her. The game began. Naruto had played chess with Ron enough times to know what Ron looked like when he was losing, which was frustrated and loud and specific about whose fault it was. He'd never seen what Ron looked like when he was winning at something that genuinely mattered with real stakes, playing at the level his brain was actually built for. It was a different person. Or rather, it was the same person, but with every unnecessary layer removed, just the intelligence and the instinct and the years of knowing this one thing more thoroughly than anyone his age had any right to know it. He was extraordinary. He moved them across the board with a strategy that Naruto couldn't follow as it unfolded, but could recognize as coherent from the way the opposing pieces reacted, always slightly too late, always one step behind, because Ron was 2 moves ahead and had been since the first move. Naruto moved where he was told and trusted the architecture he couldn't see. The endgame came fast. Too fast for the white pieces to respond to, which was the point. Ron had compressed the timeline deliberately, trading space for tempo, and by the time the white king's defenses were exposed, there was only 1 move left. Ron looked at the board. Then he looked at Naruto and Harry. And something in his face did the thing faces do when someone has already made a decision and is making peace with it. "The knight needs to sacrifice," he said, calm, even. "If I take the queen they'll take me, but it opens the king." "Ron," Harry said. "It opens the king," Ron said again, and it wasn't repetition for emphasis. It was the very quiet voice of someone who has thought past the thing that scares them to the thing on the other side of it. "You'll have a clear path, go." Harry looked at him, then at the boards, then at the clear, cold truth of the math. "We'll come back for you," Harry said. "I know you will." Ron looked at Naruto. "Don't let him do anything, stupid," Naruto said. "I know, I've been doing that for 10 years. "Good." Ron turned back to the board and moved his knight forward into the line of the white queen with the unhurried certainty of someone who's done the calculation and is standing behind it. The white queen moved. The blow was enormous. Ron was down. He was breathing, Naruto checked, a fast, precise assessment, breathing and conscious and already trying to sit up with the expression of someone who finds being horizontal undignified. Hermione made a sound beside him. "Go," Ron said from the floor. "I'm fine, go." Naruto looked at him for exactly 1 second. Then he turned and ran, and Harry was beside him, and behind them Hermione said, "I'll stay with him." And her voice was steady in a way that cost something, and the doorway on the far side of the board was open and ahead of them and getting closer. The potions room had a purple fire at the exit and black flames at the entrance and 7 bottles arranged on a table with a riddle on a scroll. Harry picked up the scroll, read it twice, set it down. "Second from left going forward," he said. "The smallest bottle going back." Naruto looked at the bottles. "How logic, the riddle has 5 clues and 3 false paths. The wine is a red herring, literally, it's described as nettle wine and positioned to suggest it's the safe option, but the line about the bottles being different sizes is the key. The smallest bottle is the one that holds exactly 1 person's worth of potion." He picked it up and looked at it. "There's not enough for both of us." "How much is in there?" "Enough for 1. They looked at each other. "You go forward," Naruto said. "We both need, listen." Naruto took the small bottle from Harry's hand and put the second from left bottle in its place. "You go forward because you're the one he'll be expecting. Voldemort wants you specifically, he's always wanted you specifically, that's what this year has been building toward. Whatever he's planning in that final chamber, part of it involves you." He met Harry's eyes. "I need to go back. Back up through the board, get Ron, get Hermione, get them out and get to Dumbledore. He put a hand on Harry's shoulder. You can do what comes next, you know you can. I know we can, Harry said. Together, we will be. Naruto's grip tightened briefly. I'll come back for you, I promise. Harry looked at him for a long moment. Reading him the way he always read him, not for doubt or deception, just for the truth of the thing, the actual fact of what was being said. 20 minutes, Harry said. If I'm not out in 20 minutes after you get Dumbledore, I'll come back through the fire, Naruto said flatly. With or without the potion, don't time it. Something crossed Harry's face that was warm and slightly exasperated, which was the exact face Harry made when Naruto said something that was simultaneously reckless and completely sincere. Don't get burned, Harry said. I've been running warm for 10 years, fire's not my problem. Harry drank the forward potion. The purple fire parted. Naruto watched him walk through it and stood alone in the potions room for exactly 3 seconds, and then he picked up the bottle for the return path, drank it and turned back into the black flames. They were cold. Not painful, just cold and dark and over in a moment. He ran. Ron was upright by the time Naruto got back to the chessboard, sitting against the wall with Hermione's hand on his shoulder and a cut on his forehead that had been cleaned with a spell, and was already beginning to seal. He looked at Naruto's face as he came through the doorway and read it instantly. Harry went on alone, Ron said. Yeah, and you came back for us. Did you think I wouldn't? Ron looked at him with an expression that was both fond and slightly rueful, the expression of someone who'd wondered and then felt bad about wondering. No, he said, I didn't actually. Naruto got him upright with a hand under his arm, and Ron found his feet with the stubbornness of someone who found being helped easier when it was done quickly and without comment. Dumbledore, Naruto said. We need to get Dumbledore. I know where McGonagall's quarters are, Hermione said immediately. She'd been thinking about the contingency, of course she had. If Dumbledore isn't there, she's the next authority with the standing to. Can you two run? Naruto said. Yes, they both said. Then run. They ran. Naruto got them to McGonagall's door, hammered on it with 3 precise knocks that communicated urgency without hysteria, and when she opened it fully dressed despite the hour she'd heard them in the corridor, had been waiting with the wand-ready stillness of someone with good instincts, he gave her the situation in 40 words. No preamble, no justification. 40 words that described exactly what was happening below the 3rd floor and why it needed addressing in the next 10 minutes. McGonagall listened. Her face did nothing dramatic. When he finished, she said, Dumbledore is in London. Then you go, Naruto said, or I go back alone. Those are the options. Tell me which one's faster. McGonagall looked at him with the expression she reserved for situations that had moved past the point where her normal categories applied. It was the expression of someone realizing that the first year in front of her was not operating on first-year logic, and adjusting. I'll go, she said, and she was past them in the corridor before the sentence finished, moving at a pace that was impressive for anyone and extraordinary for someone in teaching robes. Naruto turned back to Ron and Hermione. Stay here, he said. Naruto, Hermione started. I'm not asking, he said, without heat, without apology. McGonagall's going down, I'm going down. You two have done everything I could have asked and more. Stay here. If we're not back in 30 minutes, go to the owlery and send every owl you can reach to every wizard authority whose name you know. He met Hermione's eyes and then Ron's. Ron nodded first, Hermione a half-second behind with the expression of someone accepting a difficult thing. 30 minutes, she said. 30 minutes, Naruto agreed. He turned and went back down the corridor at a run that started fast and got faster, and the warmth in his chest came up without him summoning it, and Kurama was awake, fully awake, every vast fraction of his consciousness oriented in the same direction. He's already in the mirror room, Kurama said. I can feel it. And is Harry all right? He's alive. He's a pause. Something is wrong with the shape of things in there. Something I can tell you more about when you're closer. Naruto hit the trapdoor at speed and went through without breaking stride, dropped into the dark above the devil's snare, let himself fall past it because the plant had already been burned back and didn't regroup that fast, caught himself at the bottom with a roll that cost nothing, was up and moving. He went through the key chamber without the broom, straight up the wall to the far door in a climb that used the architecture of the room rather than the mechanism designed into it, stone gaps in the mortar providing enough purchase, chakra in his feet providing the rest. The door was already open from Harry's key. Through the chess room at a dead run, the pieces had reset, but the damage from the White Queen's strike was still on the floor, the stone there cracked and gouged, and he weaved through the board without engaging it because he wasn't a player and the board needed a player to demand participation. Through the troll room, a mountain troll already unconscious which Harry had apparently dealt with using the economy of someone with better things to do. Into the potions room. The black flames were down, the potion had worked, the passage was open. Through it, into the mirror room. The first thing he felt was the seal. His seal, the one he'd placed 2 days ago in the dark without waking anything in the castle's magical infrastructure. He'd put it at the base of the mirror. A single line of chakra ink on the stone where the mirror's frame met the floor, keyed to intent, keyed specifically to the kind of want that consumed rather than the kind that sought without selfishness. It was burning, not metaphorically. The line of ink was visibly active, glowing deep indigo against the stone, and whatever was pressing against it from the mirror's side had found its edge and was learning it, testing it. The way intelligent things test barriers, not by force but by pressure at every point simultaneously, looking for the weak place. Harry was in front of the mirror. He was standing very still, which was Harry's response to immediate danger, not frozen, the opposite, perfectly controlled stillness that meant every variable was being assessed before action was chosen. His wand was in his hand at his side and his face was turned toward the mirror, and on the mirror's surface Naruto could see the reflection doing something that didn't match the room, a second figure, overlaid on Harry's reflection, translucent and pressing. Quirrell stood at the mirror's edge, but it wasn't Quirrell who was speaking. The voice that came from Quirrell's direction was wrong in every way, not in pitch or volume but in quality, in the thing underneath it, the fact that it didn't have the character of something that had recently been through ordinary human experience. It was the voice of something that had been in absence for a long time and found the process of having sound again too interesting to waste on normal speech patterns. "The boy with the seal," it said as Naruto came through the doorway. "I wondered when you'd arrive." Quirrell turned. His face was Quirrell's, pale, strained, the nervousness completely gone now, burned away by the thing behind it that had stopped pretending. His eyes were not Quirrell's. "You put something on my door," the voice said. "I found it instructive." "You couldn't cross it," Naruto said. "I found it instructive," it said again, pleasantly. "What is it?" "It's not wizard magic." "I know wizard magic in all its forms, I've spent 50 years with it, that's something else." "Yeah," Naruto said. "It is." Harry hadn't moved. Naruto was aware of him in the peripheral, constant way, present-oriented, waiting for the shape of the thing to clarify. "Two children," the voice said, and there was something in it that was almost amused, the amusement of something that has been afraid of nothing for so long it has started to find novelty in the unexpected. "Dumbledore's pieces, presumably." "Nobody's pieces," Harry said, flat, clear, final. The thing in Quirrell's eyes moved. Looked at Harry with the specific attention of something encountering a variable it had modeled and finding the model slightly off. "You don't feel like you should," it said. "No," Harry said, "I've heard that before." The seal on the mirror, it began to Naruto. "Knows what you want," Naruto said. "It knows the difference between someone looking for the stone to use it and someone looking for it for something else. You can't cross it." "I have been crossing seals since before your country existed," the voice said, and now the amusement had an edge to it, patience running thin the way it does in things that have learned impatience from centuries of getting what they want. "Step aside, boy, and I may let the professor live." "Quirrell's already gone," Naruto said. "You know that, I know that. Stop pretending he's a bargaining chip." Something shifted in the mirror. In the reflection the translucent figure was pressing harder. Harry's hand tightened on his wand. "Akio stone," the voice said through Quirrell, sharp and sudden, the incantation arriving before either of them had clocked the wand coming up. Naruto's hand shot out. Not a spell, not wandwork. A flat palm blocked between Quirrell's wand and the mirror, and from his palm the seal construct flared gold and deep red. His chakra and Kurama's, aligned for the first time with full deliberate intent rather than accident or practice, a wall of force that intercepted the summoning charm and simply did not move. The charm hit it and spread and dissipated like water hitting a stone. Silence. Quirrell's arm was still raised. The thing behind his eyes was very still. Now Kurama said. Harry moved. He moved at exactly the moment Naruto moved, which was the thing about them, not coordination, not signal. Just the 10-year-long understanding of each other's timing that made signal redundant. Harry went left and Naruto went right, and Quirrell turned to track one and lost the other. And Harry's wand was up and Harry said, with a precision and weight that was not the voice of a frightened 11-year-old, "Expelliarmus." Not Wandrick alone. Naruto felt it, Harry's magic unleashed without the self-limiting that had muffled it for 10 years on privet drive, without the unconscious throttle of someone who'd learned too young that too much of him was dangerous. It came out clean and total, silver white and enormous for a disarming charm, and it hit Quirrell square in the chest. Quirrell flew backward, his wand spun away into the dark. He hit the mirror's frame and collapsed against it, and his turban came loose and fell, and what was beneath the turban Naruto had been told. Kurama had described it. Knowing and seeing were different things. The face on the back of Quirrell's head was barely a face. It was the outline of one, the suggestion, the memory of features organized around a consciousness that hadn't had a body in 10 years and was working from the last available template. It was pale and red-eyed, and it looked at them both with a hunger that was so total it had burned away everything that normally shared space with hunger in a human face. Remarkable, it said in the voice that was coming from the wrong part of the head, looking at Naruto. What are you? Something you haven't run into before, Naruto said, clearly. The eyes moved to Harry. And you should be afraid of me. I know, Harry said, I'm not. The face did something, not a smile, something adjacent to it, the shape of recognition without warmth. Your mother's love, it said, and the words had texture to them, something specific, something that had been turned over in the dark for years. I felt it when I tried to kill you, something I didn't account for, something I've been accounting for ever since. The eyes went to Naruto again, and him. What accounts for him? I do, Kurama said, not in Naruto's head, out loud through Naruto's mouth in a voice that was Naruto's vocal cords but not Naruto's register, something deeper and older and carrying the weight of geological time, just 3 words, but the quality of them changed the temperature of the room in a way that had nothing to do with the flames on either side of the mirror doorway. Voldemort went very still. A tailed beast, he said softly, and for the first time in the conversation something other than calculation moved through the red eyes, not fear exactly, something that fear was made of, recognition. I read about them, I thought they were real, Kurama said through Naruto and then stepped back and Naruto felt him recede into his appropriate depth, present but not forward, and the room went back to normal temperature. Kurama said privately to Naruto only, your turn boy, finish it. Naruto looked at Quirrell on the floor against the mirror. He looked at the face on the back of the head. He looked at the mirror itself where the seal was still glowing, where the stone was still exactly where Dumbledore had put it, untouched and unreachable by anything that approached it with the wrong intent. He looked at Harry. Harry looked back at him and they had the conversation they always had without words, the fast, complete exchange of 2 people who know each other well enough to skip the language. And Harry said without speaking, do it cleanly, and Naruto said without speaking, I know how. He pressed both palms flat against the mirror's frame. The seal he'd laid blazed to life under his hands and he pushed more into it, his chakra, precise and directed, the seal construct he'd practiced until it was native, and he felt the stone on the other side of the glass, felt its warmth in the way seals respond to what they're aligned with, and he opened the container that the seal had been protecting. The stone dropped into his palm from the mirror's surface, just landed there, warm and smooth and unremarkable looking for something that people had died for. He closed his hand around it. Voldemort's face made a sound that wasn't human and didn't pretend to be. He reached for Quirrell's body, tried to use it to lunge. Quirrell's hand shot out toward Naruto's wrist, contact. It was like completing a circuit. Naruto felt it the moment Quirrell's hand touched his, not pain but the violent incompatibility of what he was carrying and what Quirrell was carrying, the warmth in Naruto's chest spiking hard against the cold dead thing pressing through Quirrell's skin. The same mother's love protection that lived in Harry, but transmuted through Naruto's specific alchemy, through Kurama's presence, through the seal, through a decade of being alive and choosing every day to stay himself rather than become smaller. Quirrell's hand burned. Not from Naruto's chakra alone, from the combination, the meeting of something that was entirely alive and entirely itself against something that had been eating another person from the inside and called it surviving. Quirrell cried out. Voldemort's face contorted. Naruto didn't let go of the stone. Harry, Naruto said. Harry was already there. His hand caught Quirrell's other arm and his magic was up and present and doing exactly what Naruto needed it to do, not an attack, a seal in the wizard's sense, a locking in place, both of them holding the moment steady while the protection that lived in their specific and particular existence did what it was built to do. Voldemort screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It moved through the room at a frequency that hurt behind the eyes and sent dust falling from the stone ceiling and made the flames in the doorway gutter sideways. It was the sound of something that has been certain of its own continuation, encountering the first genuine interruption to that certainty since before either of them was born. Quirrell's body could not hold it anymore. Whatever host bond had been keeping them linked, the deteriorating, consumed, nearly gone fact of Quirrell's self, it broke, and Voldemort came apart from him like smoke losing the shape it's been pretending to be, and Quirrell folded to the floor. The smoke moved. It moved toward the only exit, which was through them, and both Naruto and Harry stood in its path and didn't move, and it hit them cold. Just cold. And then moving through and past and dispersing against the stone walls, and the room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when the thing that had been filling them has left. Naruto stood in the silence and breathed. Harry was beside him, both of them on their feet, both of them intact. Naruto opened his hand and looked at the stone. Then he closed it again and held it and looked at Quirrell on the floor, breathing barely, the thin, threatened breathing of someone whose body had been used as a vehicle for a year and was now trying to remember how to run itself. "He needs help," Harry said. "I know." Naruto looked around the room. At the mirror, its surface now dark and still, reflecting them back as themselves with nothing additional. At the doorway and the dying flames beyond it. Then he heard feet on stone running from the direction they'd come, and the specific quality of adult footsteps with purpose. And McGonagall came through the door with her wand up and her robes in motion and her face doing an immediate rapid assessment that covered the room in about 2 seconds, and arrived at several conclusions simultaneously. Behind her, older, moving with the unhurried certainty of someone who has found the ability to move quickly when it genuinely matters regardless of apparent age, Albus Dumbledore, who had apparently come back from London in time for the second half. He stopped in the doorway. He looked at Quirrell, at the dispersing traces of darkness still fading from the walls, at the mirror still, at Harry and Naruto standing in the middle of the room unhurt. He looked at Naruto's closed hand. "You have it," Dumbledore said, not a question. "Yes," Naruto said. "May I ask?" "I used a seal." Naruto met the old man's eyes. "Fuinjutsu, my father's technique." The stone was inside the mirror's protection and I opened a channel to it without crossing the protection. I worked with it, not past it. He paused. "It worked because my intent was to keep it from Voldemort, not to use it." Dumbledore held his gaze for a long moment. His expression was doing several things, and the most prominent of them was not what Naruto had expected. It wasn't calculation or assessment or the management of an unexpected variable in a plan. It was something simpler. Something that looked very much like relief. "May I have it?" Dumbledore said. Naruto looked at Harry. Harry looked at Naruto. Then Naruto opened his hand and held it out. Dumbledore took the stone with both hands gently and stood looking at it for a moment with the expression of someone who has been carrying a responsibility for a long time and is deciding what the responsible thing is. Then he closed his fingers around it and looked at both of them. "You should both have been in bed," he said. "Yes," Harry said. "You went through every protection this school has." "Yes," Naruto said. "With a house elf's worth of additional backup, Ron and Hermione, sir," Naruto said. "They stopped at the chessboard and the potions room. They're upstairs." Dumbledore looked at him. "Are they all right?" Ron took a hit from the chess queen. "He'll have a headache for a week. Hermione is fine." "And you too." "Fine," they said together. McGonagall made a sound. It was a short sound, controlled, the sound of someone who has extremely strong feelings that they are choosing to manage through professional discipline. She looked at both brothers with an expression that was too complicated to reduce and said, "The hospital wing, both of you, now." "Quirrell first," Naruto said. She looked at Quirrell on the floor. Her expression changed again. "Yes," she said quietly, "Quirrell first." The hospital wing was the kind of room that imposed rest by architecture, everything white and quiet, and arranged with the specific intent of making activity seem inappropriate. Naruto sat on a bed and let Madame Pomfrey fuss over him and found nothing wrong, which she kept confirming with increasing exasperation as though expecting to find something and being personally affronted by its absence. Harry was in the next bed, sitting cross-legged with the Chakra Theory book open on his knee, which was the clearest possible indicator that he was genuinely fine. When Harry was comfortable, he read, without exception. Ron was 2 beds down with a bandage on his head that he was already trying to convince Pomfrey he didn't need, which was going the way all such arguments with Madame Pomfrey went. Hermione sat in the chair beside his bed with a book of her own and refused to tell him he was right, which was the most honest form of affection she had at this stage of knowing him. Dumbledore came at 9 in the morning. He brought chocolate, which he set on the table between Harry's bed and Naruto's without ceremony, and he sat in the chair between them with the ease of someone who'd been in hospital wings often enough to be comfortable in them, and he looked at both brothers. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "Several," Harry said without looking up from his book. "Yes," a pause. "Several. Where would you like me to start?" "The plan," Naruto said. "What the plan was, what we were supposed to be in it." Dumbledore looked at him steadily. "You want to know if I was using you?" "I want to know if you were using Harry," Naruto said. "I have a theory about me. I wasn't in the plan at all. You didn't know I existed until recently." "But Harry," Dumbledore said, and said it the way people say names that carry weight they've been carrying for a long time, "was always central to something I have believed since the night his parents died. There is a prophecy, a prediction made before either of you were born that concerns Harry and Voldemort specifically." He paused. "It says that neither can live while the other survives, that the one with the power to defeat Voldemort would be born as the 7th month dies to parents who had defied Voldemort 3 times. Harry lowered his book. He looked at Dumbledore with an expression that was processing this, organizing it, setting it against everything he already knew. "You knew about this," Harry said. "All year. I have known about it for 11 years. And you put the stone here," Naruto said, "as a test." Dumbledore looked at him. "As an opportunity," he said. "I believed Voldemort would attempt it. I believed the attempt would require Harry to be involved. I did not account," and here something crossed his face that was not quite guilt but was honest about its proximity to guilt, "for you, Naruto. I knew you existed by the time term began. I knew what you carried. I did not know the full scope of what your father had given you. And I did not think," he stopped, restarted. "I did not think to ask you," he said, "what you were capable of." "I should have. You thought Harry would face this alone," Naruto said. "I thought," Dumbledore paused again longer. "I thought the protections I'd placed were sufficient to allow Harry to reach the stone before Voldemort, and to demonstrate something important about the nature of what protects him. I had not planned for Voldemort to be outmaneuvered by a sealing technique from a village I've never visited, deployed by a boy I hadn't thought to involve." "You should involve us," Harry said, "both of us, in whatever comes next." "Whatever comes next, there are more anchors," Harry said. "The soul partitioning. We read about it. Last night wasn't the end of anything." Dumbledore went still. "We know," Naruto said, not unkindly. "We figured it out in January. We didn't tell you because we didn't know what you knew or how much of it you were going to share with us." He looked at the old man steadily. "We're not pieces on a board. We're not going to behave like pieces on a board. If there's a war coming, there is," Dumbledore said very quietly. "Then we need to be in it as what we are," Naruto said, "not what's convenient for your plan." Dumbledore looked at both of them for a long time. The morning light came through the hospital wing's high windows and fell across the floor in long white rectangles. And somewhere outside a bird was singing with the uncomplicated confidence of something that didn't know anything about prophecies or horcruxes or 9-tailed foxes sealed in 11-year-olds. "I find," Dumbledore said finally, "that you are both considerably more than I planned for." He said it like something giving way. Not defeat, more like a wall deciding to become a door. "I will try to remember that. That's all we're asking," Harry said and picked up his book. Naruto reached for a piece of chocolate and broke it and handed half to Harry without looking, and Harry took it without looking, and the easy naturalness of it, the decade of that specific motion between them, the passing of things, the sharing of things, the constant unspoken "here, take half," landed on Dumbledore's face with a visible weight that made the old man look away. Ron was discharged 2 days later. Hermione had barely left the ward in that time, having discovered that the hospital wing had a modest but adequate supply of books she hadn't previously accessed, and she looked up when Ron stood and said, "About what you did with the chess board." Ron braced. "It was exceptional," she said, and went back to her book, and Ron stood there for a moment with an expression that was making careful decisions about how much of itself to show. "Thanks," he said quietly, and it carried everything he didn't say alongside it. On the last day before they were due to be discharged, Naruto took the Namikaze scroll and the translation ink to the window and sat with them in the morning light. He unstoppered the vial and took up the quill Pomfrey had on her desk for medical notes, and he applied the ink to the first line of his father's text, "One drop, careful." The script moved. Not dramatically, it shifted under the ink, the strokes rearranging themselves, the meaning rising to the surface the way things rise when a tide recedes and you can finally see the ground. He read what came through, slowly, and Kurama translated what the ink missed, and it was technical in places, seal theory, chakra ratios, the specific mathematics of a technique that had taken Minato Namikaze years to develop, and personal in others, notes in the margins, observations in a handwriting that got messier when the thought was moving too fast for the pen. He read for an hour. The window light moved across the floor. Harry sat beside him for the last 20 minutes and read over his shoulder without commenting, And at the end Naruto rolled the scroll back up and held it between his hands and felt the warmth in his chest, steady and old and present. Your father was thorough, Kurama said. He was. Did you know him well? Well enough to be furious with him. Well enough to understand why he did what he did. A pause. Well enough to see him in you every day, which is occasionally inconvenient. Good inconvenient or bad inconvenient? The kind, Kurama said after a moment, that I've stopped trying to categorize. Naruto looked out the hospital wing window at the grounds below, the lake flat and silver in the morning, the forbidden forest dark at its edges, the Quidditch pitch visible past the tree line with its high hoops catching the light. Students were visible in small groups on the lawn, the school's normal life resuming around the thing that had happened as normal life always resumed around things that had happened, because existence had a momentum that events interrupted but didn't stop. Somewhere below the third floor, a three-headed dog was probably still sleeping. The trapdoor was still there, the chess board had reset, the world had its own continuity. Harry said, "What are you thinking?" Naruto considered the question. Outside, Ron had appeared on the lawn and was immediately commandeered by his brothers, who appeared to be proposing something that made Ron's arms fold across his chest in the stance of reluctant consideration. Somewhere in the castle, Hermione was already thinking about next year's curriculum. That this was the first chapter, Naruto said. Of what? Of however long this takes. He looked at Harry. There are more anchors, there's a prophecy. There's a village I've never been to that knew my father and a man named Kakashi who's been sending letters and Christmas packages and knows how to get things into Hogwarts. He paused. There's a lot more to learn. Both of us, yeah, Harry said, and we're going to be in it, all of it, not because we were planned for. Because we chose to be, Harry said, because we chose to be. Naruto looked out the window again. You scared even a little. Harry thought about it honestly, the way he thought about everything that deserved honesty. No, he said, not of what's coming. He paused. Sometimes I'm scared of what happens if I lose you. That's the only version of it that works on me. Naruto looked at him. Not going to happen, Naruto said. You can't promise that. I absolutely can. I have a nine-tailed fox and my father's sealing techniques and a wand with Kurama's chakra in the core, and you have magic that made Ollivander go quiet for 30 seconds. He held Harry's gaze. We're not losing each other, that's settled. Harry looked at him with the unguarded expression, the one that didn't negotiate with itself. Settled, he agreed. Below them, Ron had apparently conceded to whatever his brothers were proposing and was being walked toward the Quidditch pitch with the expression of someone who'd been outmaneuvered by people who'd known him his whole life. The morning was bright and cold and full of the specific energy of something beginning. Naruto pocketed the scroll and stood up from the window. Come on, he said, let's go annoy Pomfrey into discharging us early. She won't, Harry said, already standing. She absolutely will. I'll ask her every 4 minutes until she does it just to get us out. That's your strategy. It works on Vernon. You are nothing like Vernon. Exactly, so it'll work even faster. Harry made the sound that was the fully expressed version of the one Ron had been managing for months. Unguarded, warm, real. He picked up his book and followed Naruto toward the door, and the morning came through the windows in long, bright lines across the stone floor, and behind them on the windowsill the scroll sat in the light, and the walls of the castle held 10 years of quietly watching two boys wait for the world to get large enough for what they were. It had. They were ready. They went out into it together.